Well, welcome everybody tonight. It has been quite a while since we've done one of these live videos for any topic, but we haven't done much on the WMSCOG lately. And tonight we have a special episode, sort of an approach that I haven't really done on here before, but I've had the idea for it for quite a while. And that is that I have in the studio with me 5 former members of the WMSCOG, who I'm going to pull up now. And so this, we've had obviously former members in the past and had a lot of interviews, but tonight we're going to do, again, something a little bit unique. And I'm going to allow each of these former members of the World Mission Society Church of God to share their, I don't know if we would necessarily say number one reason, but one of their big reasons for why you should not join the WMSCOG. And so I have a few more introductory things to say, but before we do that, I just would like to let everybody here say hi. Some of these, if you've been following the channel for a while, you guys probably recognize most of these faces, but I'm going to go ahead. What I'll do, I'll just go down the line, and I'm going to start here with Nathan. So Nathan, yeah. Nathan, by the way, disclaimer, we're having a bit of audio issues with Nathan, and so if you hear some feedback, forgive us for that. We might actually, Nathan, could you put your headphones on? I'm hearing some pretty nasty feedback at the moment, so let's try the headphone route again.
Oh man, already?
Okay, yeah, I'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, let's go to Michelle, actually. And so what I want to do basically is I'm going to have these guys kind of introduce themselves briefly, and then kind of just give a brief summary of your experience in the WMS, like how long you were in, just so those who are new to the channel kind of get an idea of who you are and where you're coming from in this conversation. So Michelle, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Colon. I was in World Mission Society Church of God back in 2009 till 2011 on the East Coast in New Jersey specifically. And I've been battling them in court for over a decade.
Yeah, so Michelle, that is a true thing. That's something to not just quickly let her say and pass over. Michelle has been battling the church that she used to be part of for years in court. And the reason for that, there's a whole lot of things that we can't get into in this episode in terms of sharing her story, but there's a lot you can learn there. If you go to examining the WMSCOG.com, for example, you can learn more about Michelle's story. Also, if you go to answering the WMSCOG on YouTube, we have 2 parts sharing her story on there as well. But basically, this organization ended up suing her for when she left the church and just wanted to share some of her opinions about it. So that's Michelle. Let's go to Anthony, who a lot of you probably are familiar with because he's been around a few times recently.
Yes. Hello again, everybody. Anthony, ex-deacon at the WMSCOG, and I joined in 2011, left in the end of 2021, and happy to give my opinion on why you shouldn't join the WMSCOG.
So you said 2011 to 2021, is that right?
Yeah, so about like 10 and a half years. Okay,
so just real quick, I know, Michelle, you weren't in quite that long, but the rest of you, that's a pretty common number for all of you, right? The 10-year mark. Or Jeremy shaking his head. So let's jump to Jeremy. Jeremy, how long were you in?
Yeah, so I was 4 years. After that 4-year mark, started going on the internet after asking to be a part of that internet slander team back in 2018 it was actually the end of 2017 with the alleged allegations of the trafficking, being careful what I say. But yeah, I started doing research, saw what former members were posting, started to ask pastor these questions too. And so that's when, I realized that this is not really true and made the decision to leave.
Okay. So 4 years. And what year did you join then?
2014, the year Jubilee.
Okay. Okay. So that's Jeremy. Again, Jeremy was kind of the idea for this, and I'm hoping to do maybe make this somewhat of a series of 5 reasons why you should not join the WMS or something similar to that, and get what I just thought it would be an interesting idea to get some of the former members who I've interviewed in the past, and if I haven't said it yet, each one of these former members here tonight, I've done interviews with on the channel throughout the past 3, 4, 5 years. And so all of them have their stories that they've shared on the channel. And so this is something I'm hoping to maybe do more regularly. And so as we're picking, I thought it'd be fun to have Jeremy on, just because Jeremy was the very first former member that we interviewed years ago. Unfortunately, that first interview, the audio quality, we were having some trouble with it. Like it sounds like we might be with this one tonight, but we'll make it work out. And so that first interview didn't go too well. So we ended up redoing that interview or having him come on again. And so again, you can find all those interviews on, if you go to Answering the WMSCOG, find that YouTube channel, and all those are up over there. So that's Jeremy. And I think last, but certainly not least, is Kelsey. So Kelsey, tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you're muted. You might have to unmute yourself there.
Yep, story of my
There you
life. I never have that unmuted. So hi. So my name is Kelsey. I was a member of the WMSCOG for a little over a decade. Same with Anthony. It seems like that 10-year mark for maybe not a lot on this call, but in general, it seems that 10-year mark is when people start reconsidering things. But no, I'm happy to be here and happy to share some of my reasoning why I believe people should not join the WMSCOG, or things that people should be aware of before they make that decision. Because these are what you'll hear today is things that the church is not upfront about, and I feel like people need to know these things to be able to make an informed decision. So
yeah. So here's the heart behind this video. Okay, just to be clear, and then I have a few kind of just side notes. I want to. It's been a while since we've done a WMS video, so a few things I want to make sure to say here up front, and then we're going to get into this 5 reasons why you should not join this church. But I want to say up front, as I always try to be clear to do, that my goal, the goal of this channel, the goal of no individual here is to be hateful or to be judgmental toward any individual in this group. I know every single person here knows that the World Mission Society Church of God has deep rooted issues that cause people harm. And so whether you agree with us or not, and whether you agree with that particular evaluation and conclusion that each one of us has come to about the WMSCOG, you're free to disagree with us, but just know that our intention is coming into this not to say that anybody who has joined this or who is in this is dumb or any sort of derogatory thing like that, but just to offer a sincere critique, I guess, on the one hand, of the World Mission Society Church of God, what it is, its behaviors, how it deals with its members, what its doctrines are, things like that. And then really the purpose of this video specifically has more of a specific intended audience. And that is hopefully to reach some of you who might watch this, who might be considering joining the World Mission Society Church of God. Maybe you've kind of dipped your toes in the water a little bit. Maybe you just ran into these guys at a Walmart. Maybe you just ran into these guys at a park downtown. Maybe they've come knocking at your door again. You've been invited to a Bible study. I don't know what the scenario is, but I know that there are many people who leave those interactions and they go to the internet, they go to Google and they search, they whatever info, whatever keywords they got out of that interaction, they're going to, if you're at least, I think if you're wise, if you're approaching this in a wise way, you're going to go to Google and you're going to try to figure out, okay, who are these people? And so my hope is that this video will find its way in front of you, that particular sort of person, because this should be a bit of a shock factor right here. I'm hoping 5 former members of this group who all have stories in which there are details that I think you would probably you'd find hard to believe immediately. But again, that's why I point you over to that other YouTube channel, Answering the World Mission Society Church of God, where you can find detailed accounts of each one of these guys' stories. Actually, I don't know if Nathan's is up yet, so I still need to get his up. So all that to say, what I would ask is that you would just listen to what these guys have to say. I think if you do that, give them a fair hearing, you'll see that there are many concerns to be had about this organization, and valid reasons about why you should not only reconsider joining them, but run as quickly as you can, because well, I won't spill the beans, because these guys are going to tell you why. They're going to give you the 5 reasons why you should run ultimately. But that's kind of the idea of this. That's the intended audience really for this video. Of course, hopefully, I would hope that current members and anybody kind of in this world or impacted in any way by the WMS will watch this and find something helpful in it as well. But okay, so before we get to the 5 reasons and start with that, I just wanted to say real quick to remind you, if you're new to the channel, if you would do me a huge favor and like and share and subscribe and do all that stuff that annoying YouTubers like me always have to ask you to do. I also just want to say thank you to the Great Light Studios patrons. I've had multiple people just randomly over the past 2-3 months join as patrons. And what that means is that they're becoming monthly financial supporters, which is what allows me to keep doing this and all the videos, the second YouTube channel. And so I've said it before, I'm trying to figure out the best way to navigate the whole financial, getting financial support sort of thing, because to be honest, I hate this whole thing. It makes me uncomfortable talking about it. But as I've continued to talk to other people who are involved, like these guys who are involved with wanting to do something to help people who have been impacted by this group, I'm seeing how much there needs to be done still. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, and there's many different projects that I have in mind and that others are working on, looking to the future. A lot to be done to help the many people that have been impacted by this. So if you in any way want to help me and Great Light Studios and everything being done through this particular platform, you can find links to become a patron in the description of the video. Also, I would say Michelle is doing a lot to help people. She's been doing this way longer than I have in terms of putting content out to critique the WMS. And you can find her stuff at examiningthewmscog.org. And I would assume, Michelle, there's ways that they can find to support you there. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a donate link at the top of the page for PayPal. Mm-hmm. Okay,
cool. So, okay, last thing, and then I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let these guys talk. The last thing is contacting us. So that's been a bit confusing, because in the past 5 years I've had on the videos to reach out to contact@greatlightstudios.com. And so what I've done is I've made a separate email for those of you who want to reach out specifically related to WMSCOG type stuff. If you're a former member, if you're somebody with family, if you're wanting to talk to a former member, if you have questions, the email to reach out to is, and again, I'll put this in the description of the video if you can't remember, but it's WMSCOG answers@greatlightstudios.com. So again, that's in the description of the video. So that's the email to reach out to if you want to set up like an interview or if you want to talk to a former member or anything like that. So with all that boring stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and just dive into this again. So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about 5 reasons why, and we've tried, there might be some similarities here obviously between some of the ways that these guys answer. That's okay, there's going to be some crossover, but I'm just going to kind of open this up, and Michelle, you are first in line in the back end of this already, so I'm just going to take that as a sign that you should go first.
All right. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I guess the reason that's most like specific to my experience with them is that the World Mission Society Church of God does not tolerate criticism or dissent. In my extreme case, of course, they sued me for defamation, for telling my story and telling about my experience and what the things that I saw in the church. I think, again, that's the extreme case because there was a whole website and everything. And I also think they needed to make an example out of someone. But even if you're in the church, from what I understand, a lot of people have gone through this. If you ask questions and you're not new, because new people kind of get away with it a little bit in the beginning, you're looked down on, and they kind of turn it around on you and say, well, something's wrong with you. Or sometimes they'll even come out and say that you're stupid, which is another thing that happened to me in a passive aggressive way. After I asked a bunch of questions, the pastor in Ridgewood did an entire service and said in front of the entire congregation, like, if you've done all of your basic studies, then you're stupid. Like somebody just said in the comments, like using your own mind, that's a no-no. You're supposed to think as the church thinks and as they want you to think, and do as they want you to do. So if you are somebody who asks questions that they don't necessarily have answers to, that's a problem for them, and they don't react positively to those things in my experience.
So I want to open it now to any of you other guys to comment on that, to confirm that if you have specific examples of how you personally saw that as being true. Open season, feel free to jump in.
I mean, I definitely saw it. Even when I was still a member and I would ask questions about like a study or something, or no, specifically something in like the Green Book, right? I'd read something wouldn't make sense, and I'd ask the questions to the overseer's wife, and then she would throw it back on me like, why am I asking that question? That I'm not studying hard enough. If I was studying hard enough, I wouldn't have that question. And I remember like once there's a subject in the WMS called what is the gospel? And they teach that the gospel is the new covenant, which is Passover. And so part of that study, it explains that, the apostles, or Jesus, he preached the gospel, right? The apostles, they preached the gospel. But none of them, I remember mentioning to them, I said, none of them actually said Passover, right, is the gospel. And even the apostles, they never preached about the Passover. And I remember asking that question, and it was completely turned back on me. Like, if you studied harder, you wouldn't have that question. So even within the church, even asking just a question about the doctrine, they turn it back on you. Let alone, stuff like you see on the examining site where it's like, obviously more incredulous stuff as, like tax forms and whatnot. But so that obviously, they get mad about, but even their own doctrine, when you're a believing member, they get mad.
So what you're kind of pointing out there is this, what I think would fall into the category of gaslighting, where you bring a sincere issue or doubt or concern. You see something, whether in the doctrine or in somebody's behavior, that you find to be objectively, troubling or wrong, and you honestly bring that to somebody in leadership, and they respond to that not by saying, "Oh, that makes sense," validating that or anything like that, but making you feel like there's something wrong with you for asking that question in the first place.
Yeah, and I didn't even ask the question because I was doubting, or it was just a genuine question. Oftentimes, the questions that I asked when it came to the studies was because I thought if I'm preaching, someone's going to ask me that question, and I want to be prepared with an answer to defend it. So, but even in that case, they, like you said, it's gaslighting. They turn it back on you, that there's something wrong with me for even having that question in the first place and voicing it. And then there's the whole, asking the question inside your head too element, which is like, a big no for them too. But yeah.
Right. Anthony, you were chomping at the bit, so go for it.
Yeah. I was, well, Kelsey, actually, that was a really good point. I was going to say that, when you're talking about, Jesus preaching the gospel, and if the gospel is the Passover, and the Passover wasn't given at that point, so what is he preaching exactly? But anyway, on a different point, yeah, I've seen it for sure. I've noticed what Michelle is saying. I've actually heard the pastor of the East Coast, Daniel Lee, he spoke about this before. He said that if you study up to King David and then you still have questions, something's not right. Something's wrong up here. Like saying basically that you're a stupid person if you have questions after that point. Meaning that the only people who are allowed to have a question are the members who don't know the doctrine. So as soon as you start to study and as soon as you get to know what they're actually teaching, because they don't show you everything up front, they hide everything. They give you little bits and pieces. So when you're brand new, you're not going to have questions. You're not going to have deeper thoughts about what they're teaching. But once you are there for a while and you really see what they're teaching, that's when the questions come up. But if somebody asks a question, what's going to be the result? I talked about this in one of the previous videos, but I'm not sure if everyone's full of like all the catalog of videos, but I had witnessed this one member who had been in the church and he had a question. He had been there for a couple of years, and it was about Jesus's resurrected body. After the resurrection, they said that he was not in his normal flesh. He was in a different, unique resurrection flesh that is different from his body before. And he asked the question, then why does he still have the piercings on his hand? Well, after that question was asked, the overseer of the location gathered all the members of the the leadership members and said, oh, I thought this brother had better faith than that. Why is he asking these questions? And then what happens is as soon as the leaders start to view him in a negative way, they treat him different. And then they set the tone and the example of how everybody else is supposed to treat that person. So now this person asks a question and all of a sudden everything gets a little strange for them. Everything gets a little bit weird. And it's all as a result of them asking a question. So what happens is if you receive a negative social result for asking a question, you're not going to ask the question. You're going to keep it inside and just hope that one day God will reveal the answer to you somewhere down the line. But to ask the question, it's such a bad result that you just keep quiet about it. And you just think, oh, I'm a sinner. This is the truth. This is the only truth. How can I question it? So, they definitely do discourage you having any sort of question. And then if you do, or if you have anything, like you're attacked for it. So you just learn to shut up. So, I've definitely witnessed a lot of that.
So I wanted to maybe have Jeremy, and real quick, Nathan, I realized that in the mix of our issues with your audio, I didn't properly introduce you. So I apologize for that. And we will certainly get to a proper introduction of Nathan soon. But so kind of along those lines, real quick, concerning Michelle's story, because Jeremy, I know you sent me over a clip, when we were putting together Michelle's video, talking about how, there were the rumors that that Michelle sued the WMSCOG first. And so along the lines of this whole conversation of how does the WMS respond to, questions or criticism or people sharing their honest evaluations? Like kind of talk about that whole aspect real quick.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So in Chicago, there's DePaul University. I was preaching with a leader at that time, and this is when I came from San Diego to Chicago, and we were trying to set up a Bible study club on their campus. DePaul is a Catholic school. They did their homework. So when we met with the head of the Christian minister of DePaul University, straight up said, yeah, you guys have been in court cases. You guys have you guys Googled yourselves, and just started naming off all these things. And so that one brother who I was preaching with, he was the one who pulled me aside afterwards and said, look, brother, just to let you know, those people, like the lawsuits that we're in, those people that left the church are the ones that sue us first. And then afterwards, we had a Sunday study going over that same topic. And there was the answering the WMSCOG, that article that was posted about Michelle. It was the image of like, a woman with like flowers. I think that article that was posted like showed all the, what I'm talking about? Like, yeah. And so like that was shown there when we had a study as far as all the members that left. There's a video of missionary Ray Ramos that only showed the WMSCOG side of the story, not the full picture. And this is like how they try to get ahead of the situation before members start to Google and whatnot. So that's like a perfect example of what goes on to try and cover that up. And then somebody did a YouTube animation video explaining as far as what it's going to be like after your first Bible study, and to prep new people that come and study at the church. So we started to teach, say James comes and he does a Bible study. We'll show him that video right after that and prep them immediately, so that seed is sown in their head that when they do go back and say they do search some on the internet, they'll think, oh, wow, well, they already told me about this, let me go back, kind of building that trust, that love bombing up front through that angle. So yeah, everything that Michelle explained, Kelsey explained, and Anthony explained is, dead on. I mean, there's so many examples. It's crazy. They'll just turn it back on you. I just want to just piggyback off what Anthony said really quick. A perfect example was meetings that they have at the WMSCOG. For leaders in Chicago, we'd have meetings late till about 11 o'clock at night. And I was concerned because a lot of the sisters would have to take the CTA, the train home to the south side of Chicago, Chinatown. And I was really bothered during these meetings because I had to work at 4 a.m. during that time. So I had to be up early too. And so that leader, the deacon, pulled me aside and asked why I didn't like the meeting. Well, he's like, better that 99 righteous, angels praising you is actually better one critique than 99 righteous angels critiquing you. So why do you not like my meetings? And I explained to him exactly all that. And he said, well, I don't know how you expect to be a leader then, because general pastor has all those meetings just like that. So so I was leading a church at that time. He said, yeah, when general pastor comes and you have to come attend those meetings, are you going to be like that then too? Like, so everything just like spins back. Like, it's not the same circumstance, not the same situation. You asked me a specific instance where it's Thursday at 11 o'clock at night, not like a Sunday at 1 p.m. So yeah, everything is always just spun back. When you come from a place of concern.
So Nathan, do you have any thoughts, any experiences you could share? Things about Michelle's specific point about how this group responds to, questions, criticism, anything of that nature?
No, yeah, absolutely. Man, there's like everybody's saying, so many examples. Man, dude, I gotta think a little bit. Yeah, so there is, man, perfect. So growing up, I'm sure you guys seen my videos I made with Jordan. So before the WMSCOG, I was a Christian. With my dad, growing up, I grew up being a Christian with my dad. So he's Pentecostal, and so the Sabbath day was something that I always questioned because you know how in Matthew it says the Lord is Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. And so, like, growing up Pentecostal, like, my dad was like, "No, you worship God every day. Like, you worship God every not just one day out the week or 2 days out the week or three. No, we worship God every day." And so, when I got into the WMSCOG, like, so I was there for like 3 years, 2010 to 2013. The reason why I remember because I kept three Passovers, and we keep the Passover every year, once a year. And so like when I was in deep into studies, like far as I made it was course 3. That's as far as I made. I didn't like I wasn't like a deacon. And so Sabbath day I had a question because like me and my dad will always bump heads every time. And the one time in course class I kind of gave a brother a fight. Not a fight like physical fighting, no, like verbally, like I kind of like just really like asked him a question like, hey, so like about the Sabbath day, can I ask you, a little more about the Sabbath day? Because like kind of it's not clear to me. Because like when you're growing up, like as a Christian, like before the WMSCOG, like I was a kid, so like I was already set with like certain things my dad told me that he like drilled in my head when I was little. And like so like the Sabbath I asked him like, oh, but like whenever I ask my dad this, he tells me this, but then when I ask you guys this, you guys tell me this, and then immediately like they just like Jeremy said, like they flip it on you. They flip it on you. Like they're so quick to like just flip it on you and then like make you feel like if like, man, why am I even asking this question? Like, And so the Sabbath day was one of the things that like I was very like weirded about because like I was just really confused. Like, but my dad says worship God every day, but then you're telling me like that the Bible says we only God 2 days. So that was kind of like a fight between like me and the person that like the deacon that like I was studying with. It got to a point where he got frustrated and he was like, "Oh, brother, let's study some more," or they'll always just find a way to like just like brush it off the way, and like kind of like in the way like of like your question, like why are you even answering this question? Like you're my bad, not course 3, course 2. Sorry, I'm going with like your way like you shouldn't be like so much that you shouldn't be asking these questions. Like how
making
are you
you
asking?
kind of like making you feel small, making you feel
Yeah.
like spiritually insignificant or they're superior to you because they don't have those questions. Just kind of back again to this sorry, I got to mute you for 1 second. I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, but just this concept of gaslighting, of you bring a genuine question, a new member who's been raised with the idea that, because of what Christ has done, we worship God every day. Today, every moment is a Sabbath in a sense. It is perhaps how some Christians might think of it. And so valid to come and say, hey, can you make sense of this? And so instead of getting an answer or even having somebody validate your questions, very often say, hey, that makes sense. I totally understand where you're coming from. Let's talk about it. They'll make you feel like, oh, brother, where's your faith? Like, what have you not studied? It's sort of this passive. So it kind of just slides by, basically, insult in a way of saying you're just kind of dumb, aren't you? Like you're not a very smart fella that you don't have that figured out yet, are you? They're not going to say it in that way, but that's kind of the attitude. Is that kind of the vibe you got, Nathan?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Like, and then it came to a point where I was like, man, like, can I just like ask you guys a question without you guys trying to make me feel like I shouldn't be asking this question? Like, and then like it got to a point where like I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna ask nobody nothing, man. I'm just gonna just be a yes man and be like, okay, yes, all right, cool.
And there you go. Mission accomplished for the World Mission Society Church of God. Mission accomplished for gaslighting, because that's what its intended result is, to get you to shut up, stop asking questions, and get in line. So, Michelle, looks like you might have something to maybe add to that there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of the things that they do, in my opinion, are designed in that way to get you to fall in line, like you say. When it comes to the love bombing, and then all of a sudden withholding that attention or withholding the affection that someone may pretend to have for you. I remember when I started asking questions, all of a sudden I was like separate away from everybody else. And I remember asking my husband at the time, like, why am I all of a sudden sitting all the way over here, far away from where I normally sit with the sisters that I normally sit with? And he said, well, because they're afraid that you're going to infect the other sisters with your doubts. And then, started talking about gangrene. And I don't remember if it's 1st or 2nd Timothy. I forget the verse. It's been so long. That, I was going to spread all of that doubt like a cancer and kill all of these people. And it was just at that point, because I was mentally sort of out at that point, it just seemed so ridiculous. Because I'm just asking questions. But if this is how the organization reacts to anyone asking questions, then to me, that was a huge, huge red flag. And one of the last services I attended was, I forget the title exactly. I have it in my notes somewhere. It was like something about faith equaling blind obedience, that whoever has very high faith does not ask questions, just obeys and just does whatever he or she is told to do. And I think that, the changes in the doctrine and them telling you one day, yeah, the world's going to end in 2012. And then when it doesn't happen, saying, oh, we never said that, and making you think you're crazy. Like you said, the gaslighting, that is to destabilize you. That is for you to just submit and give up and be like, you know what, whatever you say, just tell me what you want me to do, because the alternative to that is to suffer in there, either by being ostracized or by being treated differently, or a smear campaign. There are many things that they can do to sort of punish you while you're still in there, or, separate your loved one from you because of your doubts, because you might infect them. It's typical narcissistic abuse, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I hope you don't miss that word that Michelle just used, which is, well, narcissism, of course. We could talk about that all day related to the WMSCOG, right. But this word abuse, that particularly, I want, again, thinking of this intended audience, if you are considering joining, and again, if you're in the WMSCOG, I would find it hard to believe that you're not able, if you've been in there for any number of months, especially if you've been in there for a year or more, that you could hear what's being said and stop and say, you know what, I can kind of relate to some of that. And the purpose of us saying these things is to say, that's not okay. That is not healthy. That is not an accurate reflection of God or the gospel or people who are underneath him and walking, operating in his kingdom. These are not behaviors that they will be functioning in. Manipulation and gaslighting, which is a big part of what we talked about. Filing multi-million-dollar lawsuits against somebody who left your organization and simply shared about her experiences online for others. Jesus said, love your enemies. He said, pray and bless those who persecute you. Worst case scenario, for the sake of the argument, if the WMSCOG was the truth, I say that with gigantic air quotes right now because it's not. If it were even, think about how an organization that is the truth of God should have, according to the commandments of Jesus, responded to somebody like Michelle. Bless your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Well, here comes Michelle Colon, air quote, persecuting the truth of God. well, how has our Lord told us to respond to those sort of scenarios? Is it to file did Jesus say, hey, if somebody slaps you on the cheek, go get your lawyer? Hey, if somebody are you being persecuted, church? Well, here's what to do. You get the best lawyers out there and you go for their pockets. You get their money. You file lawsuits, you use the court systems, and you make them pay for what they've done. Is that what Jesus did? Did he say silence them? Go and silence your persecutors. Shut their mouths by whatever means necessary. Whether you have to lie, you have to hack into their social media accounts. I'm not saying they've done that, but maybe they have. Maybe they've tried. It would seem like maybe they've tried to do that. Allegedly, allegedly. We're not saying they have or have not. That's for you to decide.
I can say that they have.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's what part of my lawsuit is about. Yes. They did hack into my, back then there wasn't that much social media really. This is back in 2010. But there were online like message boards and things and email accounts that were hacked into. And that just goes to show you that they don't tolerate criticism and dissent. So they want to shut all of that down. And by any means possible, whether it's damage control or spying or gaslighting or smear campaigns, whatever the case may be, because I think, the lawsuit was also a smear campaign because they tried to paint me as just some scorned wife. I was upset because, they made my husband leave me because they convinced him that I was Satan and all this other stuff. No, this is a much bigger issue. It always has been. The goal was to help other people and try to help them prevent them from experiencing what I did, because I thought it was wrong. And back then there wasn't much information out there, and the little information there was about them that was critical about them, a good portion of that was also controlled by the church. So they wanted control of that also. That's something for another video, but and then if you become too much, they'll just kick you out. Or they'll treat you badly enough so that you'll want to leave, so that you can't say that they kicked you out. So, that's how they handle that.
Yeah.
And
So
I want to say one thing too, just real quick, if I could say one thing, because I know a lot of people who are just now joining, or not even joining, but just now talking with and studying with the WMSCOG. A lot of them say that, the church always asks me, do I have any questions, right? They're so friendly about insisting that my questions are answered. And to that, I want to say, give it time. You're new, and questions are, if it's about the doctrine, it's allowed. If it's about what you've seen online, they may or may not be nice to you when they're going through it. But give it time. Because I think it was Anthony who said, once they get past King David, and they hear about Unsung Home, and they hear about the church believes that God the Mother is a Korean woman who's living today, right? Once you get to that point and you still have questions, you'll see the difference.
So the point here in saying all this, with Michelle's point, is just to say, those of you who are thinking about joining or have joined this group, or I'd even extend that to those who have left the group and now you're looking back saying, what in the world was that, and you're disoriented emotionally, mentally, spiritually, just to say that the things that Michelle and all these other members here are corroborating together about how this organization functions, that is not an accurate reflection of God or the gospel. That is not an accurate reflection of what it looks like for a disciple of Jesus to do as he says, and to love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Paul, as he says, let your gentleness be made known to all. If a doubting brother comes to you, he'll say in places, be patient with those who doubt. And so when you have an organization that makes you feel small, lesser than, less intelligent, less spiritual, like you have less faith. When you simply come to them with genuine questions or concerns, that's a problem. That's a red flag. And obviously, it should go without saying that when you have an organization who responds to former members who simply share online about their experiences, whether they're right or wrong, and they respond to that by filing multi-million-dollar lawsuits, I would say that that's something to step back and ask yourself, does this look like an organization that is being led by God and operating in God's kingdom, which is said to be one of, Paul talks about love, the definition of love given in 1 Corinthians 13. I would just say, if you step back and consider it, I think you'll at least, you should see that there's very good reason to doubt whether this organization is really what they say they are, based on, this point that Michelle has given.
And one thing, and also too, who also sues people for speaking out? The Church of Scientology. And Leah Remini had that show, the Aftermath. I think it's on like Netflix or Hulu now. And in it she says, if the organization that you belong to claims to have the truth, like Scientology, like the WMSCOG, right? They should be able to stand up to criticism. And so they shouldn't be wary. If they're the real truth, they shouldn't be wary of any kind of questions or any kind of concerns, because theoretically they would have an answer to it that actually makes sense. So
I wanted to pull this up because this is a good point. It says the WMSCOG does not allow real questions, but only allows questions that don't challenge their sermon books. Would you guys agree with that? Feel free to unmute if you want to show your agreement or want to comment on that.
I agree with that. For the most part, yes, because unless you're like a brand new member who's studying to get baptized or has just been baptized, right? You can ask questions if you don't know that they're part of the sermon books, but the questions that you're asking could be part of the sermon books. But once you reach a certain point in your studies, which, doesn't take too long, it takes maybe a couple of months or even a couple of days, and you still ask those kinds of questions that are found in the sermon books, then yes, they don't like that.
Right. Okay, so let's do point number 2. That took 47 minutes, so we might have to speed things up a little bit on these. I did figure Michelle's might take a little bit longer because there's just a whole lot there with her experience is obviously everybody's experience here is unique, but Michelle's particularly because of the war she's been in legally with them for years and all that. But Anthony, you are next in line here. And no, I also wanted to say real quick that I did post links to Michelle's. We did a 2-part series on Michelle, telling her story, an interview, and it's sort of like an underwhelming, not fully produced documentary, but it's kind of verging on more of that style. So I put the links above part 1 and 2. I'll try to remember later on to add those to the video description too, if you want to hear more about Michelle's story. But Anthony, go ahead with the second reason why you should not join the World Mission Society Church of God.
Oh, it's kind of like one of those things where you, what's your wish? A million wishes. It's like, what's your reason? There's a million reasons. That's why you shouldn't join. But the one reason I found was that what they teach is untrue. And I don't want to get into we could go into like nitty gritty details about, the Sabbath day or the Passover, all these things that, one person will show one verse, another person will show another verse. I don't believe these things to be true. What they teach, I don't want to say every single thing that they teach is false, because, saying all is always a big mistake. You always want to, pick and choose, but I think most of their teachings are false. But there are definitely things that they teach that are completely wrong. That's, there's a million examples of why, but for sake of time, I think I know you had said just come up with a few. So one of them is, right there in their New Song book, right at the, I believe it's at the very beginning of the New Song book. It talks about the term Elohim, and it goes into details like 2,500 times the Bible speaks about Elohim, which is not a singular but a plural word for God, which is, it's true. There's El or Eloah, but they imply that the reason why Elohim is used 2,500 times is because every single time the Bible is going to say this is about God the Father, God the Mother. But actually, Elohim is used in a multitude of ways to describe a multitude of different, gods or angels or entities in the spiritual realms. Anything that's non-human in the spiritual world, Elohim is used. An example, when God says, besides me, there is no other God, the term in the Bible is no other Elohim. Or when God destroys all the gods of Egypt through the Passover, it's God destroyed all the Elohim of Egypt. So over and over, the term Elohim is used, but not about God the Father, God the Mother. So it's to show God's, as when it speaks about God of the Bible, they use Elohim because it's talking about God or God and the other entities in the kingdom of heaven. So the way that they describe it, the way that they show it to us inside of like the New Song book, or when they describe it to people, it's very misleading. So that's like one example of how the church will say one thing, but it's completely wrong. Other things go into how they mistell history. In the prophecy, Daniel's prophecy in Revelation, they speak about how the little horn destroyed 3 nations out of 10 nations because they wouldn't convert to Catholicism, and the last one fell in 538, which would be Ostrogoths. However, out of the 10, not 3, but 4 nations fell. They teach that the nation of Burgundians later became Switzerland, but Burgundians fell to the Franks well before 538. In fact, in Ostrogoths, which they say fell in 538, fell many years later, maybe like 2-3 decades later, around 560. And also, they say that the reason why those 3 nations were destroyed, Heruli, Vandals, and Ostrogoth, is because they wouldn't become Catholic. But all the other nations, a lot of them did not become Catholic until the 600s or the 700s. So their teaching about history is completely wrong. No history book agrees with the way that they teach. They want it to be 3 out of these 10 nations that they named because they want it to fit into this prophecy, but it doesn't fit into the way that they're explaining it. And then the fact that, they give this year because they want 1,260 years from 538 to the French Revolution. They want it to fit, but it doesn't fit. There's no historian that's going to say that this is the truth. The only people that you can look at is their evidence book that they give you. And the only sources, if you look, is Seventh-day Adventist pastors. There's no actual historian which would say that what they teach is true. But we are so scared to look things up because it's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that they teach that we can't even go online to look it up or in history books. And who even has the time when you're a member of the WMSCOG to go and do your own private research at history? And why would you even question them? You just feel like these people are so trustworthy and so honest. But I was teaching this stuff as if it was true. They taught it to me. And I believed it. I believed it 100% that this was really what happened. And I would speak with such confidence because it's what I was taught. But now I'm finding out that I was taught lies and then I was then teaching lies. And I believed it wholeheartedly. But that's not, because they print literature, they print it in books. So, how could it be wrong? But actually, they could print anything in a book. And you have to fact check it yourself. It goes into the 666 that they teach. They teach that every single pope receives the same crown with vicarious filii Dei in it. That's not true. Every pope receives their own individual crown, and they have it for many generations back to Pope Pius, who they claim was overthrown at the French Revolution, which he was, but they have every single crown. None of them have this inscription. The Seventh-day Adventists who created this teaching, actually, they've published articles saying that it's not true and that they need to stop teaching it, that if they care about the truth, then they can't continue to teach this teaching. So even though the creators of this 666 prophecy in the book of Revelation has said, we got it wrong and we're sorry, we shouldn't teach this, the WMSCOG, because they were a spin-off of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they continued to teach this false prophecy. And, they teach that the Millerite movement was 10 years from 1834 to 1844 because it had to fulfill 10 days of the Feast of Trumpets to atonement. But the the Millerite movement didn't start in 1834. It was 1831. So again, you see that they're changing history, changing stories in order for them to have their narrative met. But just a little bit of research into what they teach, and you'll see that these days and dates and things like that they're creating in order to prove themselves to be true is very easily discredited. It's very easily proven wrong. So, it just makes sense because they're a spin-off of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which was full of false doomsday events, which was a spin-off of the Millerite movement, which was, again, a false prophet proclaiming falsehood about the end of the world. Over and over, it's kind of like a theme, generations and generations of different churches speaking about the last day. This date and this time is going to be the, end of the world. And then that date comes and goes, but the church continues on after. So because they continue to teach some wrong examples of what happened in history,
things that have been
that
disproven already.
Yeah, things are very clearly proven to be wrong, but they continue with these conspiracy theories and teach it as fact. So, if you want false history, you could go to the WMSCOG, but if you care about what actually happened, then you probably shouldn't go.
So Joshua Davidson, who's a recently found friend of mine who helps on another channel called Faith Unaltered, but I like this word. It's like when you hear these sort of things, when you just sit back and I think those who have more kind of an awareness of some basic biblical truths, historical truths, and you hear some of the things that groups like the WMS and of course others like them try to convey, and the doctrines, the teachings they use ultimately to get control over people. The word, it's like his word is astounding. And it's like that's kind of what else do you say to it? It's just the absurdity of the doctrines when you step back and look at them. But the thing is, and I know all of you guys can attest to this, the tangled mess, I guess, in a way that is their doctrines, the strings that they tie to verses. And so they're very good in one sense at doing what they do, which is to take the Bible and to make it say whatever they need it to say by taking verses first out of context, stringing them to other verses taken out of context that have some similar sounding language being used or something like that. And they arrive at these astounding doctrines. And the thing is, my biggest issue here, of course, is like, I think there's obviously an importance with correct belief, with correct, orthodoxy has its place, has its importance. But the thing is how this affects their orthopraxy or their behaviors, how they function, how they treat people. Ultimately, that's what this comes down to, is because if all it was that the WMS was this strange group who just taught these weird things, but you saw that they were actually loving people, they were helping people, they were legitimately bettering people's lives, like that would be one thing. The thing is that what groups like the WMSCOG does, the thing that I think makes these videos necessary, and hopefully others doing the same and criticizing groups like this, is that it's not only that they have wacky doctrines that are, self-evidently false, just very quickly able to be disproven, but it's how these doctrines impact lives. That's the reason I make these videos, because there's a million groups out there, a million people who have different beliefs that I don't necessarily fully align with. That's not the thing that concerns me. What concerns me is how when wacky beliefs of organizations turn into having control and power over people, that ultimately oppresses them and abuses them, and does so under the guise of saying, I am basically the mouthpiece of God. I am as God to you, in a sense. And if you don't listen to me and the abusive things I'm subjecting you to, then you are rebelling against God. That's when I think the real issue with wrong belief, with incorrect doctrine, comes to light. So what's your guys' thoughts on all that?
I want to say one thing.
Both on what Anthony shared, if you have specifics about some of the, obviously his point is wrong doctrine, which is very broad, and we could spend the next 3 weeks on this video unpacking all the wrong doctrine. But just share. Sorry, I cut you off, Kelsey, but just your overall thoughts. Obviously, we don't want to. Hopefully, let's not go 47 minutes for each point. But if you have some quick things you want to add to what Anthony said, or the point I just made.
I want to add to the point you just made, just real quick, because when you see cult documentaries on like Netflix or Hulu, oftentimes it's cults where something catastrophic has happened. Like when you see Jonestown, almost 1,000 people, drinking the Kool-Aid, and then you see like what happened in Waco, right? And people sit there and they wonder like, how do people get wrapped into those things, right? But the thing is that it starts just the way you said, is that people, there's a charismatic leader, people rally around them, and then that charismatic leader becomes like God to them, whether that leader says they are God or not, right? In the case of I'm not saying WMSCOG would ever turn into Jonestown or like Waco or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm just saying WMSCOG, like Jonestown, like Waco, they rally around a charismatic leader, one who's dead, two who are alive, Kim Chol and John Gilja, right? And for John Gilja, they believe she is God, right? And many times when I was a member, they would say, if suddenly Mother says that the Sabbath day is now Sunday, what would you keep? Would you keep Saturday like the Bible says, or would you follow what Mother says, which is Sunday? And the correct answer was Sunday. You would follow Sunday because she is God. And so they teach that even she has more authority than the actual Bible. And so when it comes to like giving the leader of an organization that kind of power, and you're devoting your whole life to them, it's not far-fetched to understand how Jonestown or how Waco could happen. And unfortunately, when journalists and documentarians, I don't even know if that's a word, when they go out to report on these kind of events, they report on the tragic things. They don't report on a lot of the times on groups like WMSCOG or SCJ, because it's not sensational enough. But this is the time to like let people know about a group before it, God forbid, becomes something, catastrophic. Again, not suggesting WMS will become like that, but I'm just saying any a business could become like that, right? Any high control group could become like that.
Yeah.
And so, people
I would
often wonder like what. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say that one point there. I'd like to see if others here, Jeremy or Nathan or Michelle, who haven't been able to talk for a few minutes, if you have thoughts on that the way you just phrased that, I can't remember exactly, but like now is the time to do something. The importance of God forbid that this group becomes something more than what it already is. And so I guess do you guys have what's your thoughts on that? Because that sounds like maybe some who weren't familiar with this group would think, oh, that's just dramatic, or this isn't that big of a deal. Why? Because I hear Kelsey say that, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's people need to understand what this group does to people, and why we should not want it to become something more than it is. So
I would say
go ahead,
that,
Michelle.
yeah, so this group has a lot of very devoted followers, a lot of blindly obedient followers. And I'm not criticizing them on a personal level, but when you have, it's sort of like in a vacuum, right? These people exist in a bubble, and you can convince them of anything. You can tell them, don't go online, they won't do it. So you can feed them any kind of lies that you want, and you can create an enemy out of anyone that you want in order to bring the group closer together. I think that it's a recipe for disaster. It's like there's a kill switch, right? It's just a matter of, will that switch be flipped at some point or not? And in the Jim Jones example, what led to that tragedy was Jim Jones finally being put on the spot by the congressman and people wanting to leave secretly and passing notes and stuff. And he felt like his organization was, or his whole house of cards was gonna crumble. So as a narcissist, he would prefer that organization cease to exist over being found out as, or being determined that he was a fraud. And that's what's dangerous, is that the people at the top are very, very concerned with their own image and their own egos, and how far those people are willing to go in order to protect their ideology and their image. One doesn't know, but it is clear to me that there are a lot of blind, obedient, very devoted followers in this organization that if one of the leaders were to say, okay, this day this happens, enough of them will do it without questioning. I've spoken to many former members who said to me, like, if mother told me to kill myself just to buy a gun and shoot myself in the head, I would have done it without asking questions. So that is the dangerous part, is that you have this that exists already. And then you have one or two people at the top that are sort of pulling the strings. And we don't know what's going to set those one or two people off. It's scary. And I think it exists in a lot more groups than we're aware of. But when you have, especially this group that's grown as much as it has and claims to have as many members as it has and is as widespread as it is, it's a really dangerous combination for sure.
And I would say, even if, it doesn't, worst case scenario, we have a Jim Jones situation on our hands, which I don't foresee that happening with this group. And I don't think Michelle's saying, making accusations to say that's what they're going to do. But
no, of course not.
But even beyond, what's happening right now, today, in this moment, as we're making this video, is that real lives are being really impacted, as every single one of you guys here can attest to. And abuse, I do not think is too harsh of a word to say, that takes place emotionally, spiritually, based on the testimonies of people who come out who would describe their experiences in that way. And one of the things that I think that one of the most clearest grieving, I guess, examples of that here in relation to how this group is concerning right now, even if it doesn't go to a Jim Jones situation, is what it does. The families that can attest to that have come out, and families that are being broken and devastated, and I cannot count. I've lost count of the number of emails or messages I've gotten from husbands, fathers, mothers, best friends, all sorts of people coming to me saying, you know what, my husband is in this group, and he got in 6 months ago. He is an entirely different person. We're now on the verge of divorce. I'm worried about what's going to happen to my kids. He's the amount of tithing now that they're giving, which is just again, this is a whole other conversation, that what happens concerning how they take advantage of, I think, members' finances. I think would be my evaluation of the situation there. But yeah, it's families that are being impacted by this, and I think there's those who have a few that have come out and told some of their stories like that, and that maybe for those who are more new to this group, those are the stories that I think might help you understand more of why what Kelsey said is true, that God forbid this group gets any bigger, because it's not something, again, that goes back to they're just teaching weird doctrines about a mother God and South Korean dude who is second coming Christ. It's that this organization, the doctrines are being used to take advantage of people, to manipulate people. Whether I'm not saying even the leadership, all the people in this organization are intentionally doing this. They're intentionally manipulating at all times. I think likely many of them are, probably some of the higher ups. I would say, my opinion would be that there's some intentionality there. The point is, this group is harming people. The doctrines are harming people, harming families and relationships. And so false doctrine, Anthony's point. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry. Speaking of false doctrine, I wanted to point out something that to me sticks out every time. The founder of this church, or the person who founded the church that they took this from, An Sang-hong, did not believe in a mother God. Not that mother God, not the other mother God, no mother God. And he wrote 2 editions of an entire book about it. And I just saw someone commented here, I think they're a member, saying that the church teaches the true gospel. That's the one. We can talk about the root of David and Melchizedek and all these other prophecies that they've made up all day long and go in circles. One thing that you cannot deny is that An Sang-hong wrote a book called Problems with New Jerusalem, Women and Their Veils, or something to that effect because of the translation. And that anyone who thinks that there could be a God the Mother is delusional, specifically the person who wrote the original book he was criticizing, Soo-in. She was not a mother God. There was no mother God. The verses that she used to claim that she was a mother God are the same verses that World Mission Society Church of God today uses to justify their belief.
Truth, he said.
Right, unchanging truth. Exactly. It wasn't like a temporary thing that he would change his mind later. And, the church wants to convince their members that it was a quote unquote special measures law, which is literally something they made up to explain that they can sort of change the doctrine whenever they want, which is another sign of a cult. There's this revisionism that always happens. There were chapters of An Sang-hong's Green Book that were taken out that were, troublesome because they talked about doomsday prophecies and the end of days and things like that. So when you have a group who claims to have the ultimate truth, the unchanging truth, the true gospel, whatever you want to call it, and it's something that you later realize is ever changing, those two both can't be true, right? The truth is a constant. What they've been teaching has changed over the years. There was another study they used to teach called Jonah's prophecy. That's no longer taught anymore. And that's just one of them. So if your church is teaching the truth, why is the truth always different or changing over the years?
And so just to clarify, what Anthony just said was that in the preface of this book that Michelle's talking about, a book written by An Sang-hong about why there is no mother God, using the very same verses the WMS uses to prove the existence of mother God, An Sang-hong will exegete, will unpack, will teach these verses to prove that they do not teach other God. And so Anthony's point, just mention that real quick again. What was that you just said? I don't want people to miss that about the unchanging.
Yeah, so they teach us, they don't let us read the book, but when we're members, we don't get to read the book. But what they do allow us to do is hear the aspects of the book that they want us to hear, and they spin it a certain way. They say it's just for Suim, the lady who was the first one to say she was God the Mother. Now, she's written books in the past too, and a lot of the things she taught, actually An Sung Hong started to plagiarize. She was the one who started to teach about the 37 years of King David before An Sung Hong did. And she remained a member of the church. It wasn't until she started to proclaim herself as God the Mother, that's when all of a sudden he had a problem with her. And he wrote 2 versions of this book, not one, not a special measures, they teach that he's so poor, he can't even eat rice. His porridge has to be mostly just water because, it has to stretch out. And every penny he had, it was for the books of truth. He could barely afford the oil in his lamp. He had to write quickly before the oil. Like they tell these stories about him. But he made not one but 2 versions of this book because it's so important. In that book, he didn't say, this is about Suin. He said, this is an unchanging truth. This isn't temporary. This isn't a special measures. This isn't about a particular situation that happened at that time. This is something unchanging, meaning unchanging. It's going to continue. It's like when they say an everlasting covenant, when they talk about that in the church, they don't say, well, everlasting, like only for a period of time until it's not everlasting anymore. If they look at these words and when it's convenient, it works for them. But when he says there's an unchanging truth that there is no such thing as God the Mother, that Jerusalem in heaven is a place, that the bride are the 144,000 saints, when he's teaching these things as an unchanging truth, all of a sudden, oh no, it wasn't an unchanging truth. It was a temporary truth. So They diminish the words of An Sung Hong when they want to. Otherwise, it's above the words of Jesus. But when it's inconvenient for them, then you just throw in the trash. So, that's what I chimed in with, was the unchanging truth aspect.
I couldn't tell, Kelsey or Jeremy. It looked like maybe you were wanting to add in something, or maybe I misunderstood your body language.
To piggy off what Anthony was just saying, when it's convenient for them. So in the Chicagoland area, Skokie is very Jewish, heavy population. And so one Jewish person said about the 3rd and 7th day teaching that we teach in Numbers chapter 19, we would teach that in the Old Testament, when one of the Israelites would touch a dead body, they had to become spiritually clean. And it was always on the 3rd and 7th day. And then fast forward to New Testament times, that fell on Tuesday and Saturday. And we need to go to church, receive the word of God so that we can be cleansed with all the unclean people we come into basis on, a day-to-day basis. So that's why we have services on Tuesday and Saturday. And this guy straight up was like, yeah, that's not Tuesday and Saturday. That's from the 3rd day they touched that body, and then the 7th day. So it could fall on a Wednesday, a Sunday. And so we had a meeting about it and completely changed the way we taught that study. And I remember me and one sister just looking at each other, kind of like, wait, are we not going to ask about this? And this was like right before leaving, like myself. It was summertime when that went down. But yeah, so when it's convenient to them, they'll change that. And I think I brought that story up on another video prior, actually. But not just with An Sung Hong's own teachings, but I can see them even coming to the point when I forgot the name, but Godmother, she dies. I guarantee you that they're going to start teaching. Yeah. It's going to, she taught that it's now going to be into general pastor's hands, or some sort of, story as how she passed it along. But this whole time they taught that Mother will go to heaven with the 144,000. That's what they always taught. So it's going to be interesting to see when that time does come. But it's a consistent theme where when they're caught in their lies, they're quick to change that as well. That's all I wanted to.
Yeah, mark our words. Mark this point in time. September 12th, 2023, the prediction, and I think everybody here would probably agree that when the time comes, that Zongil Jia, or however you might pronounce her name, when she dies, which we don't hope, we're not wishing death upon her. That's not the point. But when that happens, because she's a human being, and you know what? Human beings tend to experience this thing called death. So I would think that's coming for her. When that happens, again, mark our words that this organization will spin the story somehow. I would be surprised if it doesn't somehow involve some kind of gaslighting again of saying it's somehow the fault of the members. They weren't ready.
Prepare the oil.
Their faith wasn't. Yeah. Yep.
That's
that. I mean, it'll probably be a mixture of things, like what you were saying. Oh, well, Mother taught that it would be past general pastor, and they'll come up with some kind of nonsense to make you continue to say, "Oh, here's my brain. Take my brain, and from that, take my life and have your way with me." You know, that's what they'll do. They'll twist the story. They'll mold it like Play-Doh, as long as it means they continue to have their power over you, and they'll say what they need to say. So when she dies, that's the prediction that I would have of, you know, some way that they're gonna spin that. Okay, so let's do this. So just to recap here, we have Michelle's, which was, Michelle, just one sentence, summarize your point. Just make sure people don't, in the midst of all this, lose our 5 reasons.
Oh, that they don't tolerate any sort of criticism or dissent.
Yeah, in extreme ways. And so, Anthony, yours was?
They're lying to you. They're lying to you about history. They're lying to you about church teachings. So that's a reason.
Yeah, liars. That's a good reason to not join. Okay, so Nathan hasn't been able to speak for a while, so I'm going to go ahead, even though he's not next in line in the StreamYard here. I'm going to jump to him. And also, I know you kind of already, Nathan, told us a bit, but again, we forgot to introduce you at the beginning. So just tell us, like, how long were you in? What was the year you got in? And then when did you get out? And then give us number 3.
Yeah, so I joined 20, like my senior year of high school, 2010. I was there for 3 years to like 2013. I'm from the LA Zion in California. And yeah, and then my part was, one of them was your kids are not safe. Man, like, yeah, cause like, so I used to work with the kids. Like my last year there, I worked with the kids, and man, like I thought I was just there just to, like, you know, just to help out, and then I guess they saw that I was good at it. I don't know, cause like I'm kind of good with kids, you know, I love kids, and I started seeing a lot of things. Like, I'm like, what? Like, why? Like, these people, like, really do this stuff, you know? And it's like, I've never seen that at church. Because, like, the church I went to with my dad, like, there was, like, Sunday class for the kids. And, like, every teacher, they were, like, so respectful, like, very nice to the kids. The church I went to, like, when I was with my dad, because he was Pentecostal. But then, like, when I started helping with the kids over here at WMSCOG, like, man, like, they started, like, pinching these kids, like, because, like, I guess they weren't listening, you know? And, like, these are 5-year-old kids, like, 5, 6, even younger. Like, the way they, like, just discipline them, at least from my location, I know many people I have seen in their locations, but, like, yeah, like,
you think, right, because you're at church, your kid is safe because somebody's watching them or whatever. But like, yeah, man, like when I was helping with the kids, like these people, like these deacons, like they're like pinching these kids, spanking them, and like they like expect them, like they set this expectation on these little kids, and it's like at the end of the result, it's like their answer is like, oh well, maybe you didn't have faith. Your faith is not strong enough. That's why your son is like this. Um, and like, but before that though, like I don't understand like why are you guys pinching these kids? Like these are not your kids. Like physically, these are not your physical children. Like you didn't raise these kids. Like why are you like in the Bible? Like the way the Bible describes kids, like when Jesus said like if I think I don't know what verse it is. If you give one of my kids a cup of water, I will bless you or something like that. And then but like there's so many verses in the Bible that like when God talks about kids, you're supposed to love the kids. You're supposed to be like loving them and like and like raising them the right way. But like yeah, man, it's just like these kids, man, like they like pinch them, like they be spanking them, like and then these expectations that like they'll put on them, like you see a 5-year-old, right, just in sitting during sermon class, and like he's like acting like a 5-year-old. Sometimes the kid doesn't want to sit. What if the kid's hungry? These kids are crying sometimes because like they're hungry, and like they say, oh, he's not crying because he's hungry. He's crying because such and such. Like your faith is not. Your faith in father and mother is not strong enough. That's why your son is acting up. And it's like, no, like what if my kid's thirsty? Like what if my kid wants some water? What if my kid's hungry? And like kids, like they gotta get their wiggles out. Like kids gotta get their wiggles out. And like there it was just like, yeah, like I mean you see kids having fun, but then it comes to a point where like they start to treat them like if they're like 13. Like, dude, that's a little kid. Like why are you talking to him like that? And then like pastor, he's not there no more, but when I was there, I saw him spank one kid. The reason why I know because like when this kid, he went to his office, he came out crying, bro. And like I didn't ask him, hey, brother, like, you okay? Little brother, are you all right? I didn't say anything because, like, because sometimes, like, if you talk to a kid like that and tell him, hey, brother, like, little brother, are you okay? Like, honestly, at least from my location, like, you could get rebuked for the simplest thing of asking somebody, like, hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? And, like, they just rebuke, And then it's like, and then so this kid went to his mom and he's like, Mom, pastor spanked me. And I'm like, damn, bro, like what? Like, pastor really doing this? And it's just like that's one of my points. And then my other one is like they like target, like their target is like they target the rich, the poor. But like, if you're rich or wealthy, man, they are after you, bro. Cause like when I went preaching, like we'd go to the nicest areas ever. Like we go to the nicest colleges, we go to the nicest malls, we go to gated communities. Like they made me jump over a gated community house, and like I could get in trouble. Like I could go to jail for that, And like they're teaching this that it's okay to do these things, and like. In the Bible, it says not like God gave us humans like the governors, counselors, the councils, like to respect them and follow the laws that are given to us here on earth, And like you're over here telling me that it's okay to jump over a gated community fence, and there's like just like the man, like he said, oh brother, like Father's coming soon, Father, like his footsteps are like next week, brother. Like you gotta jump, and it was a deacon too. And I was like, man, really, like a deacon? Like, man, deacon, like you, I don't like, like, I mean, I don't know. If a brother told me, I mean, I don't know, it's cool, whatever. But like, if you're a deacon, you have a title, and it's like you're telling me to break the law, man, okay. But like the way he said it was like he really touched my heart, like he really touched me, and it's like, all right, I'm just gonna jump this, and like they don't care if like, like you're supposed to follow the rules, and like you're supposed to, respect the laws that are given, and like, but yeah, that's like, man, like then like, and even like the poor, like they was like like the homeless, right? That's one thing. Like they don't preach to the homeless. We all know that. But like the poor that I'm speaking of is I think, I don't know, it was Anthony. Like I think he was saying that like they target, like, you could be on welfare, you could be on food stamps, and like they will suck you dry. Like, oh, you give 10%, you need to be good. And like they will go out of your way, they go out of your way to tell you, hey, how come you're not giving your 10%? Like, and like, what if like that money I needed it for like my last plate of food? That's all I got until like next week, And it's like they don't care, man. Like they don't, and like, I mean, I lucky for me, like I've never been in that situation where I was like, on food stamps. I mean, like I've been on food stamps, but like being on Section 8 or like being really low income, I mean, like I was blessed to like not be in that situations, but like they don't care if you're like, you can be rich too, but like the rich, they really go after them, they really go after them. And like, look at their actions, man. Like they go to the nicest, like we have, so in California, I'm from California, LA, we have the nicest colleges in the world. The nicest colleges, we got UCLA, USC, man, Santa Barbara, like, and like we're not going to any of these, like we go to community colleges that were like not in the hood. I mean, not like community colleges that were nice, some of them we did, but for the most part, like we'd go to universities, we'd go to universities that like top notch, and like we go to like Santa Monica, and it's like they're really like when you look at regular churches, because like my dad, we're Pentecostal, and like, man, we went to the hood, man. Like we were in the hood, door to door, like in the nastiest areas, like in the alleys. My dad would be in the alleys preaching to these people, like even to the homeless. Like my dad, like he invited the homeless, like come to our church, we'll feed you, like we're gonna feed you, don't worry about food. Like, and to see that at the church, at the cult, and it's like they don't even welcome you, like they don't welcome the homeless at all. And then they say, oh, they were born like that because their disobedience in heaven, and like, but yeah, that's hard to go on a rant, but yeah, man, like that's
Oh, sorry. So I think that's good. And there's so we promised 5 points, but there you go. You're going to get a bonus 6 point. And so I would like to kind of get just so people know that this isn't just Nathan's experience. So Nathan, what he's describing is that what he saw as a member is concerning treatment of children by the leadership, to put it, I guess, kindly. And second, concerning, how would you word it? I guess some discrimination, or maybe that's not even the best word to describe what Nathan's saying, although that plays into it. But let me pull this comment back up, because I feel like maybe, and I'll let you guys chime in on this, but it almost seems like this kind of sums up what perhaps what Nathan is saying about their approach to getting new members. So it's not necessarily that they will just go after the rich people and make you illegally jump over a gated community fence to try to get the wealthy. But it's that, well, sometimes they'll even go for the people who are on food stamps. But I would say, well, maybe I won't say. I'll just let you guys take it from there. And what I guess as members in your experience, would you say what's their motivation in those scenarios? Going to the rich or the food stamps from your vantage point? Why is it that they do that? And then maybe if anybody wants to comment on Nathan kind of mentioned the homeless, his dad as a Pentecostal would go anywhere, would preach gladly to the homeless. I know there are many stories about how this group will have homeless people come into their church and they will, swiftly go and escort them back outside the doors and not welcome inside. And so whatever direction you guys want to go with that. Who wants to jump in?
I could say a few things about this. Well, I'm really happy that he kind of exposed some of the treatment of the children in the kids' room. I think Kelsey actually was witnessed probably some stuff while she was in the kids' room as well. Every location's a little bit different, but I'm happy that he mentioned that. And I think that, it does directly kind of tie into what somebody else had mentioned about how they love tithe more than people. Well, kids can't tithe. So obviously they're going to be very low on the totem pole for the members there. They can't tithe. They take time away from the parents. So they're a burden to the church. So they don't treat them very well. But, I do think that the church has a lot of discriminatory practices. We are told that, we can't preach to the homeless, and they say that it's not that the homeless people are, because they're homeless, they're bad. It's because they're bad. That's why they're homeless. They say that their sin is so bad that that's what they deserve, and that they never deserve to be able to hear the truth. That, it's their sin in heaven caused them to be in this situation. So we have to just look at that as God's judgment. That's why we don't preach to them. They also feel the same thing about handicapped people. If somebody's handicapped, they don't want to preach to them. If, somebody has some mental disorder, or there's, maybe they have like schizophrenia or different mental conditions, bipolar disorder, they say avoid those people. There's all these, LGBTQ people, they also say don't preach to them. There's a long list. And when we do go out preaching, they do try to target the wealthy. Not to say that they, are full of wealthy people because that's their target. No, wealthy people don't really seem to attach to their message. However, they'll take anybody who's willing to give them $1. If you're willing to give your time, if you're willing to go in and, give your money, they'll accept you, but you're not their target. They're not going to really focus on finding more like you. They want to find people with wealth. They outright claim like the type of races that they want to go for as well when preaching. They say like, we're going to target these people, and, not to say that they won't accept anyone to come into the church as long as they can contribute something like monetarily, but they are very discriminatory of who they want in the church, the image that they want in the church. If you come in with the wrong image, if you're overweight, they might shame you for that until you lose weight, especially for the females. They really start to target people and who they want in the church, who they find worthy of salvation that they afford. And it is very discriminatory the way that they look at people and divide people. And like I had mentioned before with just like a chat I was having with one of the ex-members, is like, if you're even a single mom struggling to make ends meet, you know? They'll take your last food stamp. They'll accept like everything from you. They'll drain you. So, you know, if you're poor, they'll accept you as long as you're working towards them, but they really want the rich person. They say, how great would it be if your fruit that you brought in can buy us a new church? What a great blessing to God, you know? And then they give an example. I believe it's in the book of Zechariah. I'd have to look it up, where they talk about the offering. Would you offer a lamb, like, you know, a cripple or defective lamb to your governor? Then why would you give it to God? But now we don't offer, like, you know, animals. Now we offer people to God. So why would you want to give some broken down person to God? You should find the best of the best. You know, there's so many different like twisting of scripture that they use in order to justify this discrimination that they have. So yeah, it's definitely prevalent inside this church. Yeah. Oh, my
Jeremy-
sister was it leeches. Absolutely. Hello
Yeah.
to my sister who's on this.
And then real quick, because this kind of goes along with what you're saying. And then I know Jeremy had some things I think he wanted to say to this real quick, but Kelsey added in the comments, kids can't tithe, but they are expected to produce a tithe. And so Kelsey, just real quick, clarify what do you mean by that for those who are not familiar, who may not know what you're saying when you say that?
Yeah, so kids and even babies, even newborn babies, as soon as they're baptized, they're expected to tithe. Now, obviously, kids and babies don't make any money, right? So that's the parents tithing on behalf of the kids. But like the WMS, they have like individual envelopes for every single member, even the babies, and it tracks how much they're tithing each week. Like if they tithe each week, every 2 weeks, I think most people do every 2 weeks, right? But the parents are fully responsible for making sure that child tithes, and it's recorded, and then that record is sent to their, head office in Korea. So, yeah, that's what I mean by that.
So moral of the story, the World Mission Society Church of God, they really like their tithes. I mean, they are all about their tithes. You know, they're quite interested in getting God his dues from whoever it is, whether it's the poor mom who's barely able to feed their kids. Well, you better believe it. They're not gonna help her out. They're gonna sure guilt trip her into giving her last mite. It's when you consider the New Testament, the gospel, the teachings of Jesus, it's just, I guess it brings me back to Josh, who commented earlier. It is astounding. It really just is like it doesn't matter how many times I hear these things. It's like it just almost drops your jaw to the floor. Like, really? Like, they take tithes from babies. They'll make the babies give tithes as well. It just, it all adds up so much to just show. I mean, you think about the Pharisees and Jesus's condemnation of them. And I just, a couple months ago made a couple of videos just trying to demonstrate why the WMSCOG is exactly like the Pharisees on so many points. And this is certainly another, I think, example of that in their love of money. They demonstrate over and over that they love money, but they do not love people. They do not love the people that they require tithes from. They're interested in what people can give to them and provide to the organization, but they will chew up members and get what they need and spit them out whenever they're done with them and they're no longer useful. So Jeremy, go ahead and if you still have some things you want to add to any of that.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. Not just like the tithes that they love, but also the offerings that you're required to each service within the blue envelopes. And then also the overseas offering that's in the brown envelopes. And then in Chicago, at least, I don't know about everywhere else, but when it was your group's turn to cook on the Sabbath day, you had to offer $50 per person. So that tithe money wasn't going to feed the church on the Sabbath day. That was from each group. that provided for that specific cooking day. Also offerings to fill the church. There's sign-up sheets where who's gonna, offer the chair, the TVs, the tables. Also preaching festivals to feed the members during that time. And since downtown Chicago, it was a CM center, so campus mission. We didn't have a lot of workers there. So the leaders provide a good amount actually of that money. And then also just to piggyback on what Kelsey said with keeping track, that is true. After every service, leaders had to mark attendance and then also check the tithes that was given to female leader who would do the counting and back. And then we'd have group leader meetings every Thursday to keep, okay, who hasn't tithed yet? Is this member come at least once this month or 4 times or more? So it was really around like a business, like essentially, okay, we need to hit goals. This member come once, this member not come, 4 times. And then the last point I wanted to make was just Michelle's lawsuit, for example, how they were so focused on the money, like the alleged members that have left because of Michelle and the money they, allegedly lost because of that projected. I don't know how you can get that number, but actually it showed that they grew. So really, is that lawsuit about, them protecting their image, or is it about money? So just all those things I wanted to just point in there really quick. Yeah.
That's a great point, Jeremy, that adds so much to this, is that there's, you can look at the court documentation, right, Michelle, which again, if you're just hearing these things for the first time and you're like, these people, they're just making stuff up. They're just bitter. They just don't want to do God's will. They're just what is it? Judas's, and who's the other guy? Demas, right? If that's what you're thinking, I would just say, well, look, please don't take our word for it. That's taking people's word for it is what gets people into this groups like it in the first place. Don't take our word for anything we're saying. Go and examine these things for yourself. Go to examining the WMSCOG.com, Michelle's website, and you can find court documents. You can find that, as Jeremy's saying, that again adds so much to this specific point, that the church, this organization, ultimately sued Michelle for a loss of money. So they were willing to attempt to destroy a former member's life simply because she had a negative experience and wanted to share about that. From maybe somewhat of an anecdotal comment on that, is just to say that the God that I believe, that I know, the God that I believe I see demonstrated and displayed in Jesus, would have responded, and maybe even to that, an organization, the church, that is truly the church that belongs to this Jesus, would not respond to Michelle in that way. Would not respond by saying, "Oh, we lost money, so let's go get her. Let's go get our money back." That's not a demonstration of the kingdom of God. That's a much different and darker kingdom. So Michelle, do you want to just real quick? Do you have anything you want to add there, or plug, like a specific article or anything like that you might point people to if they are interested in finding more about that?
Yeah, so on the examining site, there is a section at the top that says court cases. If you click on there, all of the court cases that the World Mission Society Church of God has been involved in the United States and abroad that we have heard of, they're all on there. You can see the complaints and what they sued people for, and what people sued them for, if that was the case. Also, I wanted to say that the site, originally I was running it on my own. Now it's owned by a nonprofit, which I am a part of, but thank goodness now I have an awesome team that I work with and they help me keep things, in top shape, and help me put out content that I think is valuable and that they think is valuable to people who have left or who are considering leaving. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And again, as I mentioned, I have a link in the video description to the website, Michelle's website, where you can find all that. And she has, you can just click on court cases and you can find a variety. Michelle is not the only one, unfortunately, which that needs to be said too. She's not the only one who has had an experience like this with this organization going after them legally, attempting to. The ironic thing, the funny thing, the maybe telling thing is that they lose. They tend to lose these these legal battles, which it's funny to me that they will always refer to that verse. And Jeremy, I know we talked about this, and I just watched our last interview where I was trying to think of this verse, and both of us were struggling to think about it. But it's the one where I think in Acts, I don't know if any of you guys know the reference where if this is of God,
Acts chapter 5, verse 39 through 40.
Yeah.
What was that, Kelsey?
Acts chapter 5, verse 39 through 40.
Acts 5, 39 through 40. Let me just pull that up real quick.
Yeah, if it comes from God, you'll not be able to destroy them. You may even find yourselves fighting against God after recalling the apostles, or them stop speaking in the name of Jesus and dismiss them. Yeah. There's also another Bible that says to keep out of the court affairs, like what happens in the church, stay in church too. Just want to
throw that. Right. If you're bringing lawsuits against another, Paul says in 1 Corinthians, I think 3, and in the beginning chapters, he says if you're bringing lawsuits against one another, you've already failed. Like you've utterly failed already just by that. And in the very same epistle where he goes on in chapter 13 to define, I would argue, the most profound and beautiful description and definition of love that I know of, that he lays out and talks about how love doesn't seek its own. Love is not easily angered. Love hopes the best for all people. And you combine that with Jesus saying to love your enemies, and you arrive at some very problematic things here. But Jeremy, if that verse, just real quick again, the Acts verse you just read, if this is, read that again, I guess, and then why is that significant here? Like, how do members use that? And then the fact that they lose in court, like, what are we saying here? Why are we bringing up that verse, I guess?
So, but if it comes from God, you will not be able to destroy them. You may even find yourselves fighting against God. They were persuaded by him. After recalling the apostles, they had flagged, ordered them to stop speaking in the name of Jesus, and dismiss them. So I think in this, like how they spin it is essentially they're going to not stop growing. They use an analogy to where, a train's passing by, let the dog bark, but who's going to hear them? Meaning those who are slandering the church. Let them do all their talking, but it's not going to stop the church from growing. If it's from God, we will win. But yeah, how you reference that though, and how they use that verse, especially in court. Yeah, if you're a member watching this, or maybe a bunch of see that verse, ask if it's from God, how come you're not winning in court? And secondly, if the Bible says to stay out of court affairs, why you guys even in there in the first place? It's like 2-part question. So.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly.
I just wanted to add
says they're growing at a rapid rate.
Sorry, Kelsey.
Go ahead.
All right, I was just going to say, SCJ says they're growing at a rapid rate too. All of those groups do. But in reality, they can't produce any numbers to prove those points. So
yeah,
I just wanted to.
Sorry.
I
was just going to say.
I think there's like a little bit of a lag. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the difference between baptized members versus members that actually come and keep service is a huge difference in the church. So those numbers are so fabricated on how they say they grow so fast. But yeah, there you go, Michelle.
So I was just going to point out that if they even they claim to believe only the Bible, if they believed that verse, they wouldn't have sued me in the first place. Because if it's as Jeremy says, like, oh, let the dog bark, like it's not going to matter, we're still going to keep growing. One of the things they alleged in their lawsuit was that I had a role in not stopping them from growing, but slowing them down. So they don't even believe in their own doctrine and how they teach it if they sued me. Like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
both can't be true. We run into that situation often, you know.
They obviously don't trust enough that they are actually from God, and therefore, no matter what comes against it, it's going to prevail, because they feel like, oh, wait, we got to take matters into our own hands to prevent our organization from failing from our critics speaking out. So on the one, with one breath, they'll say, oh, we're not even worried about all you slanderers out there. We're not concerned about you. You go on, you know, like Jeremy, that illustration. We're a train passing by, your dog's barking. We're not even going to hear you. If this is of God, it'll prevail. But yet they feel the need to, when the dogs start barking, to spend lots and lots of money to get that dog to stop barking. So they're evidently a little bit more insecure about their truthfulness than you know they'll let on at other times. Okay, so we have 4 points to recap. We have Michelle, which was
go ahead, don't tolerate
Michelle.
Dissent or criticism.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Anthony?
That they lie about their teachings, or their teachings are lies.
And then Nathan?
Mine was the your kids are not safe, and them targeting the poor and the rich.
Hey, Jordan.
We lost audio.
Sorry, I muted myself. I was saying Kelsey or Jeremy, whichever one of you wants to go next. I'll let you decide, but I just wanted to remind everybody real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet to Answering the WMSCOG on YouTube, that's another channel that it's a different channel from Great Light Studios that I started that's aimed specifically at content about this organization. And there's going to be, actually, I just recently put out an interview over on that channel that you're not going to see on Great Light Studios. And I'll do that sometimes where there will be exclusive content over there. And the goal would be to soon, hopefully within the next year, get it over 1,000 subscribers. And so whatever, if you're on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, liking, commenting, sharing the video, all that helps the algorithm to put the videos out in front of more people, which would be helpful. So don't forget to do that as well. So who wants to go next? Jeremy and Kelsey. Go ahead, Jeremy.
So I want to talk about the psychological effects, from the initiation, during, and then after. So just up front, coming from a member standpoint, there's deception. So we're not even taught when we're going out preaching to say we're from the World Mission Society Church of God. So when we go preaching to universities, we'd say we're from the Melchizedek Bible Study Club, the Elohim Club. We're trying to start a Bible study club on campus and ask for a survey. So we're not even being honest with people up front. So kind of piggybacking on whatever we want, or Anthony said they lie to you. Up front, that's the case. And then the love bombing, in my instance, someone that didn't grow up in the best home, and a lot of things that happen. When you meet people that show you all this love and attention, it kind of makes you okay, building that trust with them. Okay, these people I can relate to, and come to them with any questions I may have, and I can turn to in that aspect. So they use a lot of different techniques up front to kind of bait you in just enough, and without giving you everything up front. So let's say if I came up to you and said, hey, do you want to come join my church? But it requires you to come to every Tuesday night, Saturdays all day. There's 7 feasts and 3 times every year. And 3 of those times we have to be up at 5 a.m. Well, at church at 5 a.m. and 8 p.m., 10 days straight, one of those 7 days straight. So, and then also get 10% of all your income, plus offerings 3 times every Sabbath day, and then more offerings from the church. On top of that, If a wedding falls on a Saturday or you have a funeral to go to on a Saturday, you cannot miss that. You have to be in church if you want to make it to heaven. So those are just like a brief, overview of what it's like to be a member of the Church of God. And so if we set that up front, no one's going to want to join that. So they need to give you little bits and pieces. And what they'll say is within the Bible that you can't give a baby food, solid food, needs milk. So in the same way, a spiritual baby needs little milk before being fed all that food. So it's a lot up front as far as when you become a member at first. So the manipulation, the deception, and the love bombing that they do to get members is not true up front. So all that love bombing will go out the window once you get that sermon book one and you're expected to preach. That's where things start to change. So you got the teaching of the tithes, you got the sermon book, and now it's time to go preaching. If you miss a Sabbath day, you're going to get rebuked by a group leader or a unit leader, a study done as far as not missing the Sabbath day. And then if you're not preaching, you're going to be asked what you're doing, why you weren't in church, preaching, why you weren't studying. So little by little, you're going to be kind of like work, I guess you can say, micromanaged in an aspect where you feel like you have somebody looking over your shoulder at all times, and you need an excuse as to why you may have not gone to church. So you start to develop anxiety and you start to develop paranoia, and a lot of things that you did not have before joining the church start to come subconsciously. And then you don't even realize it. It's second nature because of the fear that they teach within there. That Father can come at any point in time. If you're not ready, you're not going to make it to heaven. Do you want to be playing video games, or do you want to be at a Cubs game while Father comes, or do you want to be doing the gospel work? So don't be like the wise virgins who did not have their oil of faith prepared. You need to be the virgin that had the oil of faith prepared. So that's why all those things that start to add up over time. So when it is time to leave, you have all this fear and anxiety of, okay, where am I going to go? Where is the truth? All these things that they taught you over time start to overwhelm your mind. And you want to ask pastor, you want to ask somebody in the church, but you don't want to be looked down upon as that bad member who is doubting. And then, because you're going to know that you're going to be secluded and looked at as an outcast amongst all the other members due to all the gossip that already happens there. So, if you already say from the beginning, I know a lot of members, this wasn't my case. That's why I was hesitant, but my family was my support when I left. So my mom always asked me if I was happy over and over, because she knew deep down that I was not happy. And I knew that when I left, I can at least have my family to turn on. But those who did not, say they had a bad relationship, or because of the church, they missed out on a lot of events and kind of ruffled that relationship, those members now have nowhere to turn on. So just kind of playing all the scenarios that can happen when you become a member, from the deception, the manipulation, the love bombing, all the anxiety, the paranoia that happens due to the Church of God. And then afterwards, your distrust toward anyone that comes new in your life. Like for me, for example, my first thing is, what do you want from me? Is there something, a hidden agenda that you have as to why you like me? Like my first thought when I first left, much better at that now, but those are the things that I did not have prior to coming into the Church of God that I developed, but through different techniques and talking it out and whatnot, definitely have gotten better. But I just don't want that to happen to you, because I know, speaking with a lot of former members that have come out, a lot of the same things that they go through. So trying to avoid that and kind of piggybacking on what Kelsey said as far as stopping it now before it gets even bigger or continues to grow. So that's what I have.
So the negative psychological impacts that this group will have on you, and this will definitely relates to, for example, like Steve Hassan's bite model, where he defines and kind of lays out what, narcissistic, manipulative, cult-like, unhealthy high demand, high control organizations, how they function, or relationships. And really this whole scenario between WMSCOG, the organization, and the members, this is a relationship that in almost every way would parallel a abusive relationship between, single individual people. For example, like a married couple where one spouse is abusive toward the other. And it's interesting to me, Jeremy, you talk about that aspect of how you developed this, since leaving or after leaving. It sounds like fortunately you've kind of healed from this, but that aspect of doubting people's motives and if somebody liked you, having that internal sort of hesitation, thinking, well, what does this person want? What do they want from me? And that sort of reaction, that sort of cognitive response in a relationship is not something that just comes out of nowhere. That's something that has to be learned. It has to be taught. You have to, I'm not a psychologist, but I think psychologists would back me up on this. That's something that has to develop based on, prior experiences that have taught you to, to think and to feel about other human beings in that hesitant and, that way in which you can't really feel confident about the other's motives. And go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was going to say it actually just starts with like doubting yourself, which I realized, which the church makes you do. Right?
They're great. Yes.
You know what I mean? So if you have a question, you're getting turned down, rebuked constantly, and not doing what you're supposed to be doing or what the leaders expect you to do. For example, didn't say bye to a leader one time, went to drive members home to the military base so that they had to be back by 10 p.m. or they get in big trouble with the military. So I need to drive them back. Didn't say bye because I didn't see him. And all of a sudden, bad brother, don't talk to him. So how does that make you somebody feel when that's being said about you? And then addressing different questions doctrinally. And what are you not reading Father's book? It's in the green book. It's like, no, I read that 10 times. It's not in there. But so it's like you start doubting yourself. Doubting yourself, but that leads to doubting others because you don't even trust yourself. So, you have to learn to, one, trust yourself again, let yourself know that it's okay, that you went through that experience, that you're not the only one, to love yourself again so that you can love others and trust others again. So it gets deep, on a deep level of that, but it just, that didn't come overnight. I didn't learn that growing up, very confident, always was good in sports, always was good in school. And yeah, all that doubt came after leaving that and then having to rebuild that back up.
And doesn't that self-doubt just kind of fuel that continuing cycle? Because you doubt yourself in your own capacity to,
school, relationships,
to accurately navigate life. You doubt your own capacity to do that. And so you continue to rely and depend on the very one who's, continues to abuse you, which goes back to this, I think that's a pretty common pattern that you see in abusive relationships. Well, where else are you going to go, sort of deal? What else are you going to do? What are you without me? And so they'll beat you up till you're black and blue, and then they'll make you feel as if you're nothing and you have nothing, you can do nothing by yourself, and you need them. So you continue to go back, and that cycle continues. And trust me, this is how this group operates with its members. That's how this system works. Kelsey, taking up the back end here, and I think Kelsey's mentioned that hers might kind of just be piggybacking a bit off of Jeremy's, because I think it's going to relate quite a bit to what Jeremy just shared. I wanted to say real quick, some of these guys, I don't know if any of you need to jump off at any point, feel free to do so. After Kelsey shares her point, I would like to try to get, if there's any questions, anything that any of you guys in the chat watching would like us to comment on, or any of these former members to answer, if you have questions for them, put those in the comments in the next several minutes, and we will try to get to some of those here after Kelsey shares her last point.
Yeah, so I mean, like, well, a lot of what I, kind of just thoughts I jotted down before this, to talk about my point, was very similar to what Jeremy had already mentioned. So my main reason, I mean, like you mentioned earlier on, Jordan, is that we all have not just one reason, we have many reasons why we think people should not join the WMS, and for me, I would say that the one I want to focus on is when you join the WMSCOG, you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're giving up your freedom, because as Jeremy mentioned, you're expected to do so much, and maybe when you first join, they'll tell you, oh, you don't you just have to keep the Sabbath day, right? Just come for the service, right? They might make it sound like nice like that, but the longer that you're in it, you'll see that it's not a choice. And if you don't believe me, look at the members who recruited you. Are they missing any Sabbaths? Are they going to church only on Saturday and Tuesday? Are they not giving the church any money because they don't have to? Like, look at their example, and you'll see that what they're doing is what you too will be expected to do. So, like, to just kind of illustrate my point of why I mean that you lose your freedom when you're a member of the World Mission Society Church of God, is because just look at your weekly schedule when you're there. And I wanted to go over my weekly schedule when I was a member. And my schedule, even though I was in Portland, and then before that I was in Seattle, I'm sure my schedule can resonate with people from the church in other parts of the U.S. and other parts of the world. So I'll start with Sunday, because they say Sunday is the first day of the week. So Sunday, this is like the one day you gotta kind of sleep in. So you still, every day you're expected to wake up at 5 a.m. and pray, because that's when you're told that John Gilgal wakes up and prays for us, calling our names one by one. So you're expected to do that, and then most people go back to sleep, right? So you can sleep in just a little bit, and then I would be expected to be at the church by like 8, 9 a.m. for discipleship meeting, which is basically it's kind of like a more advanced course class. It's like past course class. It's like learning the subjects like the feasts and the staff of Moses. So you go there, you study that, then you eat some lunch, and then you go for afternoon preaching, which is from about 1 p.m. to about 4:30, right? And then you come back to the church and you eat dinner. Keep in mind the lunch and the dinner is both paid for by the members. Is a lot of the times does not come out of our tithes, is we are paying for that. And then after the dinner is either more study to get signatures, or choir is practicing. And then people typically go home around 8, 9 o'clock p.m. And then that's Sunday. Monday, again, wake up 5 a.m. And then you go to, if most people are either students or they have a job, right? So you go to work. After work, you're expected to go back to the church. You eat dinner at the church, then again, paid for by the members. And then you go for the evening preaching from about like 6 p.m. to about or 6-ish p.m. to about 9 p.m. Come back to the church, study for signatures, and then go home around like 11 p.m. And then you do the same thing Tuesday, wake up 5 a.m., right? Go to work, come back to the church, don't eat dinner because that's the there's a lot of cleaning that has to happen before the third day service. So a lot of members are coming in, so they don't do dinner that day. You just have to kind of go and eat dinner on your own, come back and dress for service. So you keep the service, and then after the service, it's like either more choir practice, more study, more signatures. So you're there again till about 11 p.m. Wednesday schedule and Thursday schedule is pretty much the same as Monday. Again, wake up 5 a.m., pray, go to work, come back to the church for dinner, preaching until 9-ish p.m., then do some preaching practice, and then go home around 11-ish p.m. Friday is then you wake up 5 a.m., right? Go to work, come back to the church because that's preparation day. So you and a whole bunch of others have to deep clean the church in preparation for the Sabbath the next day. Then you go and you have to go either to the store if your group is cooking. You have to go to the store, buy food for the Sabbath day for whatever meal you're cooking. You have to prepare your tithes and offerings. So you have to go to the bank or go to a store and get cash back and get all that situated before Sabbath day. And then you have to prepare for the Sabbath day. So like, are you having someone come to the church and you have to study with them? You got to prepare those subjects. You have to know what if you're a group leader, you have to know what all your members will be doing at all moments of the day. If you're a children's teacher, like I was for a good portion of the time, you have to make sure all the children's activities are planned. You have all the materials, everything. You have to make sure your bag is in order. Do you have your new songbook, your Bible, your veil, your tithes, your offerings, everything, to make sure everything is in order so that when you wake up 5 a.m. on a Saturday, again, you pray and then you start to get ready and you head to the church, and most people get to the church by 7:30-ish, 7-ish, around that time frame. And then you welcome the members, and then literally you're there. I'm not going to explain all the activities on the Sabbath day, but you're there until easily midnight, 1 a.m. Just, keeping the services, cooking, studying, cleaning the church after everything's done, leader meetings that someone mentioned on this call. So you're there till about 1 a.m. and then you go home, and then it's Sunday again. So literally, long story short, literally every single moment of your day, 7 days a week, is planned. And if you become a member, you're making that choice. I hesitate to say choice because I believe it's a lot of coercion, but that's the trade-off that you're making by becoming a member, is you're giving up any chance of freedom. You're giving up any sick day. You're giving up any holiday, because even on the national holidays like Christmas, Easter, even the Super Bowl Sunday, right? Even like these days that the rest of the world kind of tends to take off, the church still expects you to come and keep and not keep service, but do some team building activities or watch a movie together, have a barbecue. You're still expected to be there around members in the church environment. And so the moment you join the World Mission Society Church of God, you will never have another day off for the rest of your life. That is a trade-off that needs to be understood when you become a member. Again, when you first join, you might not see that. Well, look at, if you don't believe what I'm saying, observe the actions of those who are recruiting you. What are they doing in their free time? Ask them, what are their hobbies? They're going to say studying the Bible, preaching, right? These are not hobbies. That is work for the church that needs to be done so that people are recruited and so more money comes in to this organization. So, again, you really, and not only with your time, but one person brought up in the comments, I haven't checked the comments for a couple minutes, but one person brought up in the comments is that when you give up your time to them, you also become dependable on them, so that you start naturally asking for permission for everything. The church requires you to ask permission for everything. You can't go and once you're a member of the World Mission Society Church of God, you cannot take another vacation. You have to ask them for permission for everything. You cannot date who you want to date, inside or outside the church, right? You can't choose who you want to marry. You can't choose these are requirements because the idea is you become a member and then you become a gospel worker, and then when you do all this is what's required of you. You can't choose where you live. You must live near a church, right? If I want to go and move to no offense, Jordan, I don't know anything about Kansas, but if you want to go and live in a small town in Kansas, you probably can't because there's probably not a Church of God there, right?
Mm-hmm. There's
you
not.
have to, like I said, you have to give a lot of, and as somebody else mentioned, you have to give a lot of money to the church. It's not just tithes and offerings, as Jeremy said. It's the Zion offering, which goes to the overseas churches. You're cooking. At least, it depends on the Zion, but you're cooking at least once a month, giving like a $50-ish offering. I paid way more than that for food for the church. I was giving that, I was paying easily over $100 every other week for food for the church. And I got good at budgeting, but I mean, it's just not easy. You can't dress how you want. Men cannot wear shorts. No one can wear flip-flops. Men cannot have long hair. A lot of times you'll see people wearing fake glasses because they want to visually look like An Sang Hong or their idea of An Sang Hong. You cannot hang out with your friends. If you join the church and later you decide, oh, I want to go to school or I want to marry, right? So that I can start a career, that will be frowned upon and you'll be looked at as someone who has little faith. As other former members in other videos have illustrated in not only the Great Light Studios channel, but also the Playing in Traffic podcast as well. So these are things that you have to accept should you decide to move forward with membership with the World Mission Society Church of God. You have to ask for permission for everything. You have to do any of those things, you have to ask for permission. So there are adults asking, hey, I have a test for school on, the same day as the Passover. It's in the morning time, but I'm not sure if I should keep it because I feel like I should be at church early. And you ask the church, like, what should I do? They're going to say this infamous line, it's according to your faith, right? Which means you know the answer. We're not going to tell you directly so that you can't say, well, church told me to do this, but it's skip the test and come to church. So, which extends to even after you leave. Even after I left, I still felt like going to work. Like I had to ask permission to like go to the bathroom. I had to ask permission, like, hey, can I do this? It's just it's something that I think when we leave a high control group, that's something that one of the after effects that we have to deal with. So just kind of, I know I talked a lot. I just want to end with one thing, is that when I was, right before I left, we had a missionary in the Portland church, and he said that the worst spot to be in Zion is the, what they call the Church of God, the World Mission Society Church of God. The worst spot to be in Zion is a place where people let you do whatever you want, that you are not rebuked for anything, that people just leave you alone. So, so it's really, like I said, it's the more, like if you become a member, you don't have any more choices. You're told what to do and you have to obey. And that the more you grow in the church, the longer the time you're there. They actually showed, for me, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but they showed a chart that, it showed the longer you're a member and the more you kind of go up in rank, like from, member to unit leader to group leader to deacon, missionary, elder, and so on, right? All the way up to God the Mother, right? Your freedom goes down. And they say that the one with the least amount of freedom in the World Mission Society Church of God is John Gilja, God the Mother. And so she has no freedom to do anything. So why do we think we deserve any freedom?
So I just wanted to say real quick, just to pull out what we all who are in this video had the privilege of seeing in the private chat we have going on. But Anthony has officially retitled the church as the World Mission Society Church of Gold Diggers.
Worst mission society.
Oh, worst. Okay, worst. So there you go. That's a new name. So Kelsey, I think to summarize that point would be in a simple way. There's so much in that, but why you should not join. Point number 5 would be because you lose your freedom. You lose you lose your life. You lose the things that make you. They're going to take that and they're going to make you abandon that. I mean, Jeremy could speak a lot to that specific point of having a football career, potentially in your future, and just having to get rid of that stuff because this church just demands so much, just a completely unreasonable amount of time that they require you be devoted to them. And that's, Kelsey does a great job at just laying out what a Sabbath for a WMS member looks like. And so just, I guess as a summary to that.
So much resting on the Sabbath.
Yeah, so right.
No,
Right.
Yeah. And as a leader, just a quick note, like if you have to pick up, like, for example, military members, you're up at 4 a.m. to go get them at 5 to drive an hour to the meeting, and then driving them back before getting home. So it's like 4 to midnight. Like it's a long day. It really is.
Yeah.
No fun.
Yeah, that so much rest. Just please remember that the Sabbath is about this pattern that was meant to be set up in life, like a step, almost like you take this weekly step, where in that step you remember you're supposed to bring to remembrance that it is your Father in heaven who provides for your well-being. It's not you who provides for your own well-being by your efforts, by your striving, by your exertion and your religious energy for God. And you're supposed to sit, rest, and remember, I'm okay because I have a God that is taking care of me. And I don't need to go out and exhaust myself to get all the things done that I need to do. I need to remember that at the end of the day, it's God who provides for my well-being. It's a restful thing. The WMSCOG, I can't think of how you could possibly more clearly just flip Sabbath upside down and invert it inside out and make it the exact opposite of what it was intended to be. But at the same time, the ironic thing is that if you go to YouTube or if you encounter a member, dialoguing with a Christian, one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to go after Christians for their breaking of Sabbath, for their disobedience of Sabbath. And so it's just huge hypocrisy that goes on there. And so we could talk about the whole Sabbath thing all day, but just a reminder that all this, our goal, our intention is not to just hound on these specific people. It's not to be hateful even toward the people at the top. That's not the goal, but just simply step back. We're looking at the experiences, the culmination of evidence, and just saying, from our opinion, from our vantage point, there are some very concerning things about this group. And so that the purpose here was to lay out 5 reasons for why you should not join the WMSCOG. And if you're in the WMSCOG, 5 reasons why you should get out and run quickly. And if you've left the WMSCOG and you're thinking, man, maybe I made the wrong decision. Maybe this is the truth. Where else am I going to go? What other church has the truth? And you're maybe in that place of doubt. I hope this helps to reaffirm to you that you made the right choice in leaving. Because these are just 5 of many, many more reasons that we could talk about and plan to in future videos. So I know all of you probably would have so much to add and to say to Kelsey's point there. But I want to, respect all of your time and everybody in the chat as well. And there were several pretty good questions that I've stored. And so I'm going to pull up some of those, and then I'll hand it over to you guys to respond to some of these. So let me see here. Here's the first one I have marked from Josh Davidson, who says, did the feeling of being drawn in and then recognizing it was a deception make you feel more afraid to trust church leadership? And how have you tried to heal this fear? Anybody want to step in on that one?
Well, I think a lot of people who leave, they want to take a break from church after what they went through at this location or this organization. One of the things that they did train us while we're in the church is that every single pastor, religious person, representative of a church is the devil, that they're there to destroy your soul. If you see them, like, beware false prophets, you have to leave. These are like, we looked at them like monsters. They made us look at every single church leader that way. So when you leave, and even though you begin to separate yourself from that sort of mentality, and all the things that they put into your mind, there are things that linger. Kind of like how a lot of the people who leave the church still are scared of Michelle, because they put this stuff in your head. So church leaders, for instance, are people that we typically be scared of. Now I'm seeing, like, there's a lot of cults out there. There's a lot of organizations that will take advantage of people. I'm happy in a sense that my eyes have been opened to noticing when things are not good in different churches. I've personally, explored a little bit, gone to different places, and maybe to the point where I'm a little bit like hypercritical of some of the teachings or something that might be happening at a church. But I do think that this experience has made me, one, before, hate all churches and church leaders. And now that I'm like walking away from that indoctrination, still it's given me apprehension of trusting. So, I definitely think that is a truth.
Any of you other guys want to chime in? Nathan, yep, go ahead.
No, yeah, absolutely. Man, so when I left Zion, like, man, I don't know why I call it Zion. Yeah, it's so hard. Like, it's not just hard; it's very hard, very hard. Because, like, man, it took me like 8 years. It took me like 8 years to get back to church. To just like step in back into the temple. And like the reason why it's easier for me, because the fact that I was brought up Christian, I was brought up like in the Christian household. My father, like, he was very, very, very big on us going to church, very big. And then now growing up, when I came to that call, like, even though I wasn't in it like 10 years, like you guys, or like 12 plus, 15 plus years, like I was just there for about 3 years. And like, it felt like forever. It felt like 30 years. And like, you learn so much, because like, you're there every day and they're training you. And then like, it feels like forever that you're there. And like, I still believe in the Bible. I still believe in God. And like, it was hard to like do that again, because like the things that are being taught to us, right? Passover, the feast, how to be a good example, how to be the image of Christ, like, like everything that is taught to us, kind of like the Bible kind of taught me. God was like, because in the Bible, right, it says don't question God. Never question God, the Bible says. And I'm not trying to preach to nobody. I don't want to feel like I'm preaching. Like, sorry if it comes out like that. I'm not trying to preach. That's not my intentions. But like, I still believe in God, and like, so I kind of didn't curse God. I didn't want to curse him and like tell him, like, why'd you do this to me? Why? But like, I took it as like, I just took a break, and it's okay. It's okay to take a break. Like, I took a long break, and like, now this church that I go to, like, man, they've been so patient with me. Oh my gosh, they've been so patient. So I've been going to this new church for about, I want to say, 2 years now. I've been going, and I don't go every Sunday. Like, every Sunday, I'll miss a couple Sundays. I'll miss like 2 Sundays, even 3 Sundays. And like, just to be with my family, you know, because like I work like every day, and like my spiritual faith is like I'm thankful that I'm thankful because my dad put me, you know, in church when I was a little kid, and like man, it's so hard to come back. It's so hard to like say, you know, just to step in the temple, you know, it was so hard, but like just like it's really just if you just I guess the best example I could put, if you just put a brick, right? If you just put a brick every day, just lay a brick down every day. Now you don't have to put 2, 3, 4. Just put one brick every day. Eventually, you're gonna have a wall, and so like it might take you 20 years, it might take you 30, it might take you 40, but like if like you know not everyone's in the same situation as me who you know grew up Christian, and a lot of people have like gone different ways, which is okay, you know, and like if you could just you know just take a break, that's fine, just take a break, you know, but like me, like I took that like man, I took a long break, bro, and it's just like man, like it feels good to like step into the temple, like it feels so good. Like, and I'm not doing it for the feel good, right? Because like I'm still like I still have that goal of heaven, you know. I'm not saying you guys don't. Like I'm not saying you guys don't have a goal for heaven. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. Like it's just me, like me, just me myself. Like I believe there's a heaven. I believe there's a hell. And like the Bible, to me, in my opinion, like is true. Is the word of God. That's just my opinion, though. You know, that's just me on my faith. And like, you know, like the reason why, because like, I mean, in my opinion, like I feel like the word of God is absolute. And us as humans, you know, our word is never absolute. We're sinners, you know, and like, but I'm just thankful that like I'm able to return to God and like able to praise Him, able to read the Bible. Like I'm so happy. I was scared to touch the Bible. I was so scared. Like in my opinion, like the Bible is the scariest book you ever want to read, but also it's the most beautiful Bible you ever want to read. In my opinion, though, you know, in my opinion. And so it's okay to take a break, you know, but like it it just feels so good to like return to like God and like praise Him and read the Bible. And like now I'm like going to like these Bible studies, and like being involved in church activities is so fun, you know, and like it's different. It feels so different. Like I could miss 3 Sundays. Nobody's gonna call me, hey, where you at? How come you're not here? You know, not even one time has no one ever called me, yo, Nate, where you at, bro? Like, how come you're not here? You missed a couple Sundays. Where you at? Like, I could miss a whole month. No one's gonna call me. Like, you know, but like, it's not even about that though. It's just like that freedom that Kelsey was talking about. Like, you know, it's just like completely like it's like when you join them, the church, like the cult, like it's like completely gone, you know. And like now that I step into this temple, then you like you know just the temple of God. Now it's just like I feel like I have real freedom. You know, I could like you know come to God like with one mind and like really just like talk to Him and like just really you know um, really repent, and then start to give a long-winded answer, but. Yeah, that's just my like.
Yeah.
That's just my journey. That's my journey on where I'm at, and I'm just
Yeah,
really thankful.
well, I think your the illustration of one brick a day applies in so many scenarios. You know, whether that is you're on a track trying to reestablish faith, and I'm not one to be here on this platform and judging anybody for whatever route you take. Now, I am unashamedly a follower of Jesus, and my hope for anybody is that they will realize, you know, in concerning this particular topic, that whatever it is, whoever it is that you experienced in that organization, that wasn't Jesus. And so, I guess just the encouragement to say, when you abandon that, don't think that that is one and the same as abandoning Jesus. I think this situation is so much can be likened to, there was a time when I had Chipotle about 5 or 6 years ago. Me and my brothers and cousin went on a camping trip. So we ate Chipotle. I didn't finish my burrito, so I decided to just wrap it up and put it in the car. And the next day I ate some Chipotle. Unfortunately,
Oh, no.
I ended up throwing up and, coming out both ends for the next 3 or 4 days. And, for years after that, while camping, yeah, it was wonderful. But for years after that, you know what? Every time I looked at Chipotle, I wanted to retch. I just couldn't take it. I loved it before. I loved it. But that experience made me, every time I saw it or thought about it, it would literally cause this, involuntary response inside where I didn't want anything to do with it. And so the problem, though, there was no issue with the Chipotle. Chipotle is not the problem. That burrito wasn't the problem. The problem was that, there was something bad about the chicken because of what I did with that burrito. So I hope you're seeing the analogy, and I'm not trying to preach either. I'm just saying that if you are to, I respect anybody's decision, whatever direction you go. But I just would hope that people would realize that, Chipotle isn't the problem. And I don't think Jesus or the Bible are the problem. And that's not to say that there's not questions outside of the WMSCOG that need answered and difficult things to grapple and wrestle with Christianity. But just to say that, don't think that abandoning the WMSCOG because of all the obvious objective issues with it is equivalent to abandoning Jesus, because they're not the same thing. And I think many members have this bad, justifiably, 100% justifiably, just aversion to anything Christianity, which to me makes complete sense. And I've had similar, well, I can't say similar, but I think we all have to wrestle through certain, with our faith. We all have to wrestle through things that don't make sense. But yes, one brick a day. I think that's a great way to look at it, whatever direction you're going. And so again, I know there's so many people that all you guys would probably have thoughts, but I want to get to, there's another question that I think would be fun to get some of your thoughts on. This is maybe a bit of a difficult one in a sense, because I know there's not one right answer to this, but a Dreadful Monkey commented and said, you guys got any advice on how to get your wife out of the church? She has been going for 10 years, and we went to my brother's wedding, and she went to church all day. So advice on how to get, a loved one, a family member. What do you do? This is a very common question I get. What can be done? How do you help get somebody out that is in the church that you're close to?
I don't think that there's ever a right answer for that one.
Everybody
kind of has everyone has their own.
Sorry.
Everyone has their own expiration date. Everybody has that time where they're going to go. I would just say, asking questions is good. Just kind of let them think about really what's happening. I know as a member, I would lie to everybody about what was happening at the church, like family and friends. And like, I would create a different, because they couldn't know like really what was happening there. So I had to cover the church, but asking questions and having them admit out loud what they're going through, they're going to have to notice that things are a little bit strange. Like when they start to realize that they can't be honest about their life, they're going to start to feel uncomfortable. So, I mean, that for me, I think would be a good step, but just inquire, and ask like, oh, you spent a lot of time there. What did you do today? Tell me all about your day. Tell me about, and get them to talk about what they're going through. It might make them reflect a little bit more, to recap it. But again, there's no surefire way, because cults have a lot of tactics to keep people stuck.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy?
Yeah, I was going to just kind of recap off what Anthony said. Each situation is different, so I would first ask like how their relationship is now with her being in for 10 years. Just understand the situation, because there's so many different ways you can take it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's being patient, not like hounding her, because that's what the church instills in them, that family members close to you, they're going to speak against it. So you don't want to start throwing out like slander or coming at them with stuff that you've been researching online. Instead, I would ask them questions with, things that you've seen through Great Light Studios and through the Examining website, but in pieces. But don't just say like, hey, you guys have been sued, what's going on? Ask Bible questions. So, hey, can you maybe go over with me a Bible study, and start having her teach you, and then but you asking her questions, and then making her think for herself. You have to kind of set that in a way where you're not attacking, but coming from a gentle point. But at the end of the day, it just depends where you're at in relationship within 10 years of her being there. Yeah. So
yeah, that's I'm seeing people saying patience in the comment, which I think that's such a great way of thinking about it, Jeremy, is letting them, even allowing them to go through the teachings or the different aspects of the sermon book or whatever these things are that have convinced the man, and just say, hey, can you share this with me? Which requires patience, because most people aren't going to want to sit through that, especially those who already know what this group is and what it's doing to them. But I do think there's some wisdom in that, a lot of wisdom in being able to just let them share. These are the things that convinced me. Look at what the Bible says. And then you find the place to gently ask questions, find the moments where questions become available, whether it's in that scenario where they're teaching you, specifically sitting down, walking you through the doctrines, or just in your everyday life. Find those moments. Don't force those moments. I wouldn't say in most scenarios going and taking, printing off pages from the examining site and getting all these arguments from wherever it is on the internet and getting this stack of papers and sitting down and saying, okay, here we go. Let me tell you why what you're doing is, that sort of approach is probably not going to do. It's going to inflame the situation. But I think there's a way to be patient and ask questions when those opportunities present themselves, and what that's ultimately going to take, and what I would say is just to be a person, show them that you love them unconditionally, that you're there for them no matter what. Let them know that you're there no matter what, whether they stay in this group or not. You're not basing your relationship with them on whether they leave or not, because I guarantee you that's not what they're going to get from the WMSCOG. They're not going to get an unconditional love relationship, and I think eventually that's going to stick out to them. That's going to, and if hopefully when they get to the point of leaving, they're always going to remember that how you loved them through it and were there for them, and you're going to be somebody who's safe, that they trust, that they feel like they can talk to and even share openly about their questions and doubts. And so it's going to be that genuine, gentle, loving, caring place and approach that's going to give you any kind of platform to speak anything that they're going to be able to listen to. Michelle, did you want to say something? It looked like you were maybe wanting to say something, or maybe you're just shifting your position.
No, I was on that point. I think there are different stages of someone's membership in a cult, right? You're gonna have your really high moments where your faith is, you feel like it's at its height, and then there are gonna be those times when you're down and you're doubting things, but you can't talk to anyone about them, especially not in the church. I think if you have a loved one in, like if I could redo the situation that I was in, is to make that person understand that you're there for them for when they do have those low moments without judgment. Because I think if they feel like there's somewhere to go when they do want to leave or when they do have doubts, someone to talk to who's not going to judge them, who's outside of the church, because you can't do it inside the church, or they will learn that you can't do that inside the church eventually. That will be what perhaps will give them the opportunity to leave, because we know how hard this group works to alienate people from their friends, their families, even their jobs, so that their only resource is the church if they've succeeded. So if a member has already kind of cut off their family because they don't agree with their decision to be in the church, and their friends, and they've had to like fight and defend their position for so long, when they are having doubts, then they really have nowhere to go and no one to really talk to. So I think, and it's the hardest thing to do, right? Because you see someone who was maybe loving and a very happy person generally, but when they join this church, they become a completely different person. And I think it's jarring for families to see something like that. And it happens over such a short amount of time. And you kind of want to just like have them snap out of it. And so you may say things, in an abrupt manner, or, without a filter, or because you don't know, right? And then you're just kind of feeding into the narrative that the church has already told them, like, oh, Satan's going to use your family and your friends to try to take you away from the truth. It feeds into the narrative, and it just reinforces the cult teachings. So it is a very, very difficult thing to do. And it, like a lot of people were saying, patience, it can take years. But if it's somebody who, like, your child or a parent or a brother or sister, I think it's a little easier perhaps with family members versus like boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wives. And that's much, much, much more difficult, speaking from experience. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Speranza in the comment said, love is stronger than mind control, which is looks like a quote by Steve Son, which is a great, simple, but really profound quote. And Jeremy, you commented that love of your family is what actually got you out.
Yeah, I've been saying that since the beginning. My mom, and my family was there the whole time.
Yeah. So if that's, it seems like decent evidence, I suppose, that loving, being patient, showing that you're somebody that's there for them will have an impact. Especially again, because it's going to be something different. That kind of love is going to be something different than what they're getting in the WMS, because the WMS just does not have that sort of love on tap, or anywhere in the cupboards or in the storeroom in the back. It's not present there. Maybe in some individuals, in very brief.
They have a bunch of coats in a closet somewhere.
A bunch of what?
A bunch of coats. Remember, Jeremy? The coat drive.
It's in the lost and found.
Oh, right. Yeah.
All outside and stuff.
all the things that people donated. That, yeah. Sorry. When you said that, that's where my mind went.
No, now that you mentioned that, I remember that. Yeah, that's a story for another day, but a good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it fits if the shoe fits. Okay, I'll try to keep this at 3 hours, so maybe we'll take one more. I have one. There you go. We've broken 4 before. Kelsey,
we've done more than 4. Come on.
Have we done more than 4? Back during COVID, where there was nothing else to do. Yeah. So this is a good one from Omi Sawa. I don't know how to say that name, obviously, but they say, do you feel your time there affected who you are in a bad or a good way?
Can I answer?
Sure.
So I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, obviously there's, first of all, you can't go back and change the past, right? So even though I would love to say, I wish I'd never been a part of it, fact is I can't change that, right? But I think yes, after I left, there's a lot of psychological effects that come with, leaving a high demand group, right? Like I was mentioning, like feeling the need to like ask for permission for everything, right? Not being able to necessarily immediately trust someone, or, having in the back of my mind, like, are they for real? Like, are they legitimate about what they're asking? I'm more cognizant of questions that are being asked, and when I ask a question, their reaction to it. So some things that I don't really want to have in the back of my mind, like I now inherently do. Because after leaving, I did spend some time looking at, like, trying to understand the characteristics of a cult. Because when you're in the church, they'll say things like, oh, Jesus was called a cult leader 2,000 years ago, right? Being a cult, like, it just means, a small group with, non-mainstream beliefs. They kind of really downplay that word. And it wasn't until after I left that I was like, oh no, this is like a legit concern. This is a thing that really does, cause some damage. So like, psychologically, there's definitely some issues there, and some, depression, some anxiety, but there's also, I try to see some also like positive things that have come out. For example, there's a, I get to talk to people like, everybody on this call. I, formed some great relationships coming out of this church. When you're in the church, you even learn some business skills, right? You learn how persuasion, speaking to strangers, communication, follow up, like some good corporate skills you learn, right? So I think it's kind of like a mixture of both. I can't go back and change, but I can't go back and change this situation. I was a member. I am a former member. Will always be a former member of the World Mission Society Church of God. But like Nathan said, brick by brick, taking each day as it comes, and just trying to improve each and every day. And it's okay not to be okay some days. So. But even on days where I feel like I'm not okay, I got, a good support system of, of all these friends, right? That understand, what I've been through, and even people from other cults too understand, because it's really hard to understand and comprehend unless you've been there. So that's my answer.
Just real quick, you just mentioned other cults, and it just popped in my head that just back to kind of the prior question we were talking about of how potentially to help people out. One thing would maybe be to find ways to put in front of them other cult groups, information about them, which might just be, hey, look at this interesting Netflix documentary about, such and such a cult, which there are plenty of, or, there's Amazon and all sorts of places that have these kind of documentaries. And for some people, it's been, watching those and looking at other cults, how they behave, how they operate, that suddenly makes it click in their minds, this thought of, oh, wait a minute, I've seen that before. That's how we operate. Oh no, I'm in a cult. That process has kind of taken place for people. And so that's just one thing I wanted to add in there that you might consider if there are ways that you can, peacefully and, get this other information about other cults in front of people. We have the story of Chris, who is now working quite a bit with us in all this stuff, a former Shincheonji member who a different South Korean cult group, but he watched Kelsey's story, an interview about where Kelsey was sharing her experience, and that led him to leave his cult organization because he just saw all the similarities. And so just, might be something to keep in the back of your mind. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that now that we've kind of exposed that, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow the WMSCOG goes and tells all the members that you can't look at anything about cults. So
yeah,
I can imagine that's going to be the next step. Like, oh, you can't watch these documentaries, or I mean, like, usually they don't even have time to do it, but anyone who has a family member who wants to introduce it, they might just go and say, oh, you can't watch this, because they're starting to probably realize with all these different cult documentaries and stories that it's opening up a lot of people's eyes to what this group actually is. So,
yeah, I might have
but
just,
hopefully by saying this, now they're going to know that if they do.
Yeah,
One
right.
A little bit early.
one thing that, because I one of the questions that I get a lot is like, is there like a community of like ex-members that I can talk to? I just want to
Right.
point out that Jordan Young has a Discord. I don't know how Discord works, to be honest. But he's got a Discord, so if you reach out to him, I mean, maybe he'll provide you like the link or however Discord works. But I know there's a community there of those are like WMS members, but also Reddit is a really good community of former just ex-cult members in general. Especially, I know Chris has plugged the Shincheonji one. That's got a ton of ex SCJ and even ex WMS members on it too. So and then there's like the subreddit for just cults in general. It's just cults. These are really good tools to get just to talk to people who have similar situations. So
Yeah, I've considered starting like a Facebook group for that. An issue that to be aware of is that there are spies actually in this whole situation that you got to be careful of, and so that kind of complicates the whole thing. And so if you do find a community online, just be careful who you're like, if somebody wants to message you or you're, unfortunately, you do have to keep some skepticism and caution, a lot of caution, going back kind of to what Jeremy was describing earlier. But I think in this situation, that's needed and appropriate because the WMS will and is active online trying to get, allegedly, maybe I should put that there, online trying
That's also in the lawsuit they filed against me.
Okay.
We had a Facebook group years ago, and members got in there and they were just spying on what everybody was saying. Things have changed obviously since then, but yeah, you have to be careful. But there are ways to get in touch with people outside of the group. Like, don't let that be the reason why you don't leave.
Right.
But I wanted to piggyback off of something that Kelsey said. Like, I personally can't think of something good that I learned in the church or that made me a better person. I think when I left, my desire to help people kind of took over, and I have met the most awesome people that had it not been for me getting recruited, I would have never met them. A lot of those people are on this call, but I was thinking about that the other day, that I've met like some really awesome people that I would have never met otherwise. So I'm grateful for that for sure.
Yeah. And I, just from the, most of you in this chat now, I've in this video with me, I've known for years now, and know that all of you are great people who all of you just want to help people. And so if anything came out good, I can see good that came out that it impacted you in that way that perhaps, isn't points for the WMSCOG, but I think you guys have taken a bad situation in your life and have come out of it wanting to use that experience to help other people. Every single one of you in this video, I've seen do that over the years now. So from my perspective, I'd say that's a way that I've seen it. I'm really hesitant to give the WMS any credit for that. It's in spite of the WMS, but it's all about these guys and how they've chosen to respond to it. So I think I know there's other questions, but I'll maybe just leave it at that question. So if any of you guys want to comment on that or just share any final thoughts, we'll take a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll close this down. And I did want to say that actually tomorrow morning, me and Anthony will be recording another interview with a former member. So we've talked about having Anthony start to come on some and help me do some of the interviews, and probably even just go off and do some interviews on his own. Just because I'm very limited in time. If I had the ability to do this kind of stuff, the channel full time, I would definitely do that. And that's the goal, to be able to get to where I can just put out consistently, 1 or 2 interviews a month, maybe an interview a week, and other stuff. And so another shameless plug to say, if you want to support Great Light Studios, you can do that at patreon.com /Great Light Studios. Again, links for that are in the description. And my thought is I'm more and more seeing that there's other people. I've told some people close to me that are helping with some of this stuff behind the scenes, that this is beyond something that just needs like one or deserves one full-time, job. This is something that needs a lot of attention, a lot of work, a lot of potential things that can be and need to be done to help people and to continue to push back against groups like this. This is a very small part of that. I hope it's helping, but I'm confident that this is not. Again, we just kind of barely over the past few years scratched the surface of what needs to be done, because this group is not going away, and they're continuing to destroy people's lives and families and all the rest. And so, yeah, thank you for everybody supporting the channel already. And so with that, I'll just let you guys, if you have any final thoughts, let me know. Oh, and also I wanted to point out, sorry, real quick, that was the other thing I was going to say, is me and Edgar and I, who was in the comments earlier, I don't know if Edgar's still around, but it's nice to see you tonight, Edgar. Another one of the reasons that I'm doing this in the first place is because of Edgar. But we're going to record in the next week or two a video. We recently, in the past month or so at least, had a private conversation with a member who had been in the group in the WMS for a few years. I can't remember exactly what position she ended up having, but we talked with this person, and just they were very recently. Well, Edgar is here. Hey, Edgar. But they had very recently left the WMS. Reached out to me and Edgar did a private video call and just let her share her questions. And she shared like 5 or 6 questions that are very common questions I get, not only from members who have recently left the WMS, but members who are kind of antagonistically even often coming to the comments and saying, well, you're saying we're false. Well, where else should we go? What, you're not offering anything else, those type of questions. And so, so these are questions that Edgar and I, and I don't know, we might get somebody else involved in it too, but we're going to make a video kind of trying to respond to some of those 4 or 5 of the most common questions. And I think a lot of members who are just leaving or on the verge of leaving have, and hopefully that will be helpful. But those are just a couple things to be looking forward to. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe to Great Light Studios and the Answering the WMSCOG, because I'm never sure where I'm going to post stuff at this point, because I would like to continue posting some exclusive stuff to the Answering the WMSCOG channel. So anyways, if you guys, again, if you have any final thoughts that you want to share, or if you saw a question that you want to address, we can do that as well. But I'll just open it up to you guys. Kelsey?
I don't have any, I can't see for some reason, I think the chat's filtered for me, but just because I have to jump in a minute or so, but I just want to say, for, again, the target audience for this video is those who are considering joining the World Mission Society Church of God. And so for those folks who who are on that fence, I really challenge you to take what we said and, take what we said and really internalize it, because we are people who have spent a significant amount of time, I mean, collectively, right? Me and Anthony have what, 20 years, and then Michelle 4, so 24. Jeremy, you have 4, 28, and Nathan, I'm sorry, I forget how much, but uh, maybe like another additional 5 or so. So, I mean, we have over 30 years experience collectively. Plus, you add in all Jordan's years of dealing with, the WMSCOG, right? So, really, see, it really, honestly take a look at what we have to say, and, do your own research. So, I mean, watch more videos on Great Life Studios. Just Google former members of the World Mission Society Church of God. Check out the examining site. Look on Reddit, right? And, again, look at those who are recruiting you. Look at the lives that they are leading. Do you see them talking about enjoying anything outside of the church? Do you see them, wearing anything except, business clothes? Do you see them, having friends outside the church, spending time with their families outside the church? Really look at these things and decide, is this the life that you want to have? Is this the life you want to lead for the rest of your life? And don't be afraid to, if you decide that, no, I don't want to be part of this anymore, but you don't know how to break it to the church, don't be afraid. Stand your ground firm and say, hey, I really don't want to be a part of this organization anymore. And you have the right to say that to them. And if they continue to come, and say, hey, come to this church, you can do something about it. Whether that be, I'm not saying that would happen to you, but there's certain things to do when dealing with harassment. So you have the power to say no. So don't be afraid. And if you need any help, or have any questions, just reach out to any of us or Jordan, and we can help you we can provide some guidance to the best of our abilities. So
I'm actually going to put the email right now in the live chat, just so people know the right email to reach out to, because we have the email most people have been used to reaching out to. I have tended over the past few years to not get to every email because I have too much to do and too much going on, and I hate that. But I've added some people to this new email who can kind of help me monitor stuff and respond to all the emails. So I'm going to put that, if you do want to reach out, if you have questions, I'll put that in the live chat. And it'll also, if you're watching this later on when we're no longer live, it'll be in the video description as well.
okay. I need to jump, so bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey.
I actually need to go too. I'm on the East Coast, so it's a little late here.
Yeah, I know. I gotta go get my kid.
Sorry, man. All right. Yeah, you guys feel free to drop off, and we will.
Well, thanks for having me again, Jordan. Have a good night,
Yes, of
everybody.
course.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, man. Yeah, hey, Jordan. Thank you, man. Thank you again, man. And that's all I want to say, man. Thank you for this platform. And I love what you're doing, bro. And Anthony, man, nice meeting you.
You too.
And I love your story, bro. And like, yeah, man. Thank you for this, man. And I gotta go be a dad now. So.
Yeah, go be a dad. Go be a better dad than the WMS taught you to, or tried to teach you to be.
Yeah. All right, guys. I love you guys. Man.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right.
And then there were two.
Yeah.
And then there were two.
Am I the one overstaying my welcome now?
No, I have a hard time shutting these things down. I'm always like, surely there's something else to talk about, but we will have the interview tomorrow. So yeah. Well, I guess what's your overall thoughts here? Maybe we can kind of summarize here before we jump off, because there were, obviously the intention of this video was 5 reasons not to join. And so obviously a ton of information was shared here, and hopefully I'll be able to take clips and make shorter clips to put out so they're a little bit more digestible for people. But maybe we could just list out those 5 reasons and then call it a night.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Good. Yeah. As a recap, well, I know Michelle's was that the church does not accept any criticism. Like it's beyond criticism. Mine was that their teachings are false. Historically, they're false, and biblically, they're false.
And I like the way you put that too, that they're lying to you. Really, they lie to you about doctrine. They lie to you about what the Bible says about who God is, about church history, and just regular history.
Yeah, and throw in the gaslighting and everything like that. Their lies go beyond just the study room and the sanctuary. It goes so deep. And then it was how they treat the children. Then the third reason,
Nathan had 2.
Yeah, how they treat children, and then also that their target is they discriminate, and they're kind of money seeking with their direction for preaching and recruiting, and then there was
Jeremy's was
Jeremy.
4.
Yeah, and Jeremy said psychological damage that the church causes. And then finally it was Kelsey's, which kind of piggybacked off of that one. And she talked about, was it loss of time? Loss of consume your life?
Right. I think she kind of summarized it as losing your freedom. Or, I mean, you could probably word it as you lose your, self-identity, which is maybe a bit of a different aspect of it, but just really, she emphasized the, unreasonable amount of time that they require from you, which even goes, I don't know if she got into it much, but goes to the point of, you miss out on weddings, you miss out on funerals, you'll be, criticized or looked down on for if you don't go to family members' funerals at times. There's been many members who have talked about that sort of thing. So yeah,
me, I missed weddings, funerals, birthdays, like everything. And I had a lot of explaining to do when I left. I just felt like, how am I supposed to go back to these people? Because like they mentioned, family's going to be there for you when you leave, but look at all the things I did, and I didn't even explain why. Like I couldn't say to them, I'm missing your wedding because I'm going to this church, because I didn't want the church to look bad to them. So I took that, I didn't go to my grandfather's funeral because of the church, but I couldn't say that because I didn't want anyone to think negatively of the church. So I just took it like I'm just a jerk. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's definitely, you lose so much in this place. But anyway, those are just 5 out of a multitude of reasons why you shouldn't join this organization.
Yep. So if you're at any point on this spectrum of being on the verge of joining, being smack dab in the middle of being a member, or you're just having left, I would hope that something here was helpful, and that you will just at least consider the things that have been said in this video. So thank you everybody for watching. And again, we'll be coming out with more interviews with former members and other live videos. Hopefully we'll be doing these more often in the coming months. So don't forget to subscribe and all that stuff. So, all right, Anthony, we will see you in the morning.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.